to the March 5th, 2024 PUSD Governing Board meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Kevin, would you lead us? All right, thanks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, our next item is approval of the agenda. Item number 5 on our agenda for everybody following along. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next item is item 6A, consider approving the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of February 6, 2024. Take a motion.
I make that motion.
You have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any op-
Abstain.
Because Cara, you're abstaining because you
I
weren't
wasn't
present?
there.
Perfect, thank you. We just have to list that. Great. Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Item 7, presentation, A to F label process. Renee.
All right, back again.
That's
So
right.
nice to see you again. First of all, I want to say thank you for inviting me back for this. I think it's exciting for the district to see so many A's that we have and to understand a little bit better of how we got there, because oftentimes when I'm coming, it's strictly about the achievement assessments. And so lots of acronyms get thrown out, like the AASA, the ACT, the AZ-SCI. Just to let you know, more will be coming your way with this presentation. To clarify, FAY, FAY is full academic year students. And within the A to F figuring, there are all kinds of different ways. Sometimes the non-FAY students are included, sometimes the FAY students only are included, but also the MSAA, which is the alternate assessment for our special education students who don't take our achievement tests. And the AZELA, which is taken by our EL students, so English language students in there. Do you need to hear better? Okay, how's this? A little better for you? Okay, good, good. So to get started real quick, I want to show you there are actually 3 cute little charts that the ADE puts out for us. And the measurement for the K to 8 grades, we'll be looking at this chart. 9 through 12, they're evaluated slightly different with the chart. And then we do have Genesis as our alternative school, which is also a different pie chart. And you can see on the bottom the different areas of what all of the points come from in the A to F letter grade. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the K to 8 and talk specifically about that. Notice right away 50%. 50% of the A to F grade is on growth alone in scores. So I'm going to move ahead to the A to F model, and we have 5 of our buildings that fall under this model: Abaya Judd, Lincoln, Taylor Hicks, Granite Mountain, and Mile High. These are the scores that each of the schools earned in the fiscal year 23 letter grades in here. Again, the chart, which you'll see on the left over here, shows you, and is color-coded to match up here, which areas in the scoring and how it existed. So oftentimes when I'm coming and talking about the AASA scores, that is 30% of the A to F letter grade for this model. The growth score is 50%. And so in that growth score, what they're taking is, like in our K to 4 buildings where only 3rd and 4th graders are tested, truly that score depends on our 4th graders, because the 3rd grade year is the first year that they actually take a test. So the growth is figured from our 4th graders and how well they improve and move out of the areas. Another thing to take notice of in here is the points eligible. So they add up to 100, but what you will notice is Lincoln and Mile High only have 90 on theirs. Their scores are divided by 90 because they lack the amount of students needed for the EL category. And the EL, the English Language Learners, it used to be ELL, but it's English Learners, that category is actually 10% across all of the models that you'll notice are English learner students. And because they did not have at least 10, then the state actually just redacts that information. So we don't identify them in there. And their total points eligible are then divided by 90 rather than 100. The state then, we have a variety of ways to earn bonus points until you see in the yellow line the total points earned. And at the bottom, you can see the letter A's and the B and the total score, cut scores at the bottom for our K-8 buildings. All right. In the next one, the 9 to 12 model, we have one building. We have Prescott High School. And you'll see there again, the color coding to match the chart in here, the pie chart. Proficiency is 30% of the score. You will not see growth in this model for fiscal year 23. However, you see, just like in the K to 8, you see the EL, whoops, I went ahead. Let me skip over back to the subgroup. So instead of growth, what the state did was they added subgroup proficiency. And the reason they did not have growth is because at the high school level, grade 11 takes the ACT and grade 9 takes the ACT Aspire. They did not have a cohort until this year that took both tests. So the change will be made in the fiscal year 24 A to F letter grade, that the subgroup will be taken out and then growth will be put back in. To the score. I do want you to notice in there the EL proficiency and growth, and I think that's really important to note because oftentimes, as what happened with our high school, is sometimes it's a limited, we have to have only 10 students. So if we have 12 students, that Azella test that they take counts for 10% of a letter grade in there. But in addition to that, subgroups are made up of all students, and I think there's 13 different categories. It's divided by race, it's divided by economically disadvantaged, by special ed students, by the EL. So not only do the students count in the EL proficiency on the Azella, but those kids are also counted in subgroups and counted in proficiency again because they also have to take the ACT. So the subgroup categories of what you see in there, it's all of our students, and they can be counted multiple times within those categories. In there. Again, because they had EL students, it was divisible by 100 in there, and they could earn total bonus points. Total point earned is where the grade comes from in this slide. And then finally, there's another model for the alternative students in here. And Genesis was approved last year by the state for our first year to be an alternative school. And because of that, there is no letter grade for them. However, it's important to note again, when you look at their proficiency is 15% of their letter grade, and the focus for this alternative school, and this is for all alternative schools that are approved in Arizona, the focus is more on growth to graduation and the college and career readiness when they figure that score. So that is a quick
Could you
questions.
go back to the high school one, just
Sure.
a couple slides back? I have a question about the EL.
Mhm.
It's worth 10% of the grade.
Correct.
We got 2 points.
Correct.
I guess my question is, how many EL students did we have, and how long had they been with PUSD? Is that
So,
possible to answer?
Could I defer to someone in the audience by
Sure.
chance in that? Do you recall last year how many students? So Principal Adam Neely could address
Yeah,
that?
no, absolutely. We had 12 EL students. And the biggest challenge we had is that over half of them have opted out of service for EL at some point in their time frame within PUSD. Often happens at an elementary age because would have been a pull-out scenario, whereas at the high school, it's like an elective they take to make sure they're getting their resources. So we've worked really hard to try and remedy this year, working on that Azella test, practice test, and trying to get some of these families to opt back in because we have some great
Right.
resources for these kiddos, but it is very challenging to test out by the time you're in high school
Yes, it did.
And you received an A last year, and that was kind of the big, that was the big score that kind of brought you down.
That was the difference for us.
No.
So Renee would have said that last year we were out of a 90, just like some of the other schools.
Yeah.
We were out of 100, and, you know, just to play the math game, I think you can clearly see the difference in that scale score.
Yeah.
How do you get the college and career readiness? It's a self-reported score. Do you just
Like to take?
poll the,
No, so it's quite a project. It's my summer project every summer. The good news is I've been doing it for well before I was the principal. I take every senior's transcript and I score according to AP classes, dual enrollment classes, what they scored on the ACT, CTE courses that they took, and then we get points according to all the things that they've done towards their career and college readiness practice. It's a really neat thing to go through and calculate, and we showed some great growth in that. That's the best score we've had in a long time due to some things that we've been adjusting and some of those opportunities you guys know we have within CTE. So, sorry, it's awkward to answer in the back row, but I'm trying.
So you're welcome to
Come on.
come on up
Jack
here
Berger.
and take over, but
I don't want to.
I'm glad you're here so you can answer. Andy?
Just wanted to follow up on the EL thing. So that's 10% of this scoring model with less than 1% of our students.
Right. Yeah, 0.8% of our students counted for 10%. And like Renee said, they counted in every other category as well. They count in the career and college readiness piece, they count in graduation, et cetera. So overall, those kids probably count for 12, 15% of our grade, and there's 12 of them out of 1,460 kids. So there's some disproportionate impact there. We're doing the very best we can with them, but Adam mentioned our big challenge is a lot of their families have chosen not to have them part of our support for English language learners in learning English. So but we get tested on them anyway, and the state counts them, 10 times the rate of any other student.
I have one more.
Sure,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Last year was the first year all of our juniors took the ACT test. Is that correct?
No.
No,
they-
not yet. Was it 2 years
I
ago?
believe it was this the
Were
third
all
year
of
they're
them?
taking it?
This was our third year.
Third
Do
year.
we keep track of how many of those students actually go on to college?
We do have that data.
We have that, okay.
and
I
can be
could get that
tracked.
from you some point, okay. I'm just curious as to how many actually took well, they all took the ACT, but I'm
Right.
curious as how many of our kids actually go on to college.
Okay.
We collect data on that. For the most part, and help me out if we've got a different data set for this that I'm not aware of. We ask the kids prior to graduation, what are your plans? And they tell us this is what we're
Right.
doing. Can we actually determine who showed up at Columbia, who showed up at Stanford, who showed up at Brigham Young, who showed up at GCU, et cetera? That's kind of out of our hands, but we can have them report to us, what are your plans? And many of them have very, very solid plans. Yep, I know I'm doing this. A lot of them say, I think I'm doing this. What they actually do and what they tell us we'll do, there may be some variance in the data there, but that's the data that we have, I believe. Am I right about that? Okay.
Yes. I think, Linda, did you have a question? Did you?
How does all of this have anything to do with the benchmark tests that we give every quarter and then the standardized test? I mean, this is everything else, it seems to me.
Well, the proficiency that is listed in here, those are the state tests that I had reported on before that are in there. So the way that the benchmark tests, which we give 3 times a year, those are to help guide the teachers in instruction or not in instruction, to give them the data to say, are your kids moving toward proficiency? And is it likely how they will do on state tests? So somewhat of a predictor along the line. How are we going to do? What do we need to change? What do we need to address for learning gaps?
So on the proficiency, we know that the proficiency for the K-8 and for the K-8 is based off the Arizona proficiency assessment exams, right?
So all of them, so through the K-8 as well, It is the Arizona, right, the AASA, the AZ Sci, the science component in grades 5 and 8 affects the buildings that have those students as bonus points, but also the MSAA is part of the figuring within here for the alternative assessments.
Okay. So in the high school grades, is that proficiency score that's based only on the ACT?
On the ACT, and I believe the MSAA, do you know? I think it's the MSAA that the 11th graders take in there, but truly, in fiscal year of what we have, the proficiency in the 9 through 12, the 30% is the ACT alone. The ACT Aspire was part of bonus points that they could get.
So that's sophomore, right?
Freshmen.
Freshman.
Yes, yes.
For next year, can I just ask that you put one more column on there to tell what the possible total points are?
For each one, so if you look at the weight, that is the total points out of 100 for this one. Yes, that can be done. But if you look at the weight, 30%,
30 out of
10,
100,
it's
20
30,
out of
10,
100.
5, 5, 10, 10, 10, 20.
I got that, but we got 30%, which is 20.28. I'd have to do the math to figure out
No,
what 100%
sorry,
would
yeah,
be.
we're misunderstanding. So
Yeah.
the data you want is actually there. 30 of the points out of 100 are there. It's 30% of the total grade. It's 30% out of
Oh, so
100.
30
We
is the
got
total?
20.28. What percent of 30 is that? It's roughly 2/3, you can see. So it's probably about 68%, but yes, 30% of the
Oh,
total
okay,
grade
okay.
is that. So
Okay,
that's what
so-
that means.
So our four-year graduation rate is 10%, but we only got 5? So we only had like 50% of the kids graduate, or?
Close. Our 4, 5, 6, and 7-year graduation rate, we got 9.8 out of 10. Our improvement in that area for 4-year graduation rate only, we got half of the points. So we were already doing very well. We made some moderate growth from
The improvement
there.
in the graduation rate was in green.
No, that's
Graduation rate improvement.
That's for subgroups, that's for our Hispanic kids, our boys versus girls, et cetera. Yeah, it's super, super complex is what you're pointing out. But yeah,
Okay.
to answer your question though, Cara, how did we do on graduation rate? We got 98%. 9.8 out of 10.
Okay, so the 4-year we got, okay.
But for the improvement on graduation rate, because we were already doing so well, as you can see,
Okay.
we only got half of the points that were available. How were those available? Adam could probably give us a little treatise on that if we are interested.
Okay.
All right. Any more questions? All right. Thanks, Renee. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to item 7B, Beyond Textbooks. Kelsey?
I had
Oh.
another quick question. so-
There is?
Renee, before you leave, are you gonna be giving us the first quarter test results so we have something to compare last month's
Galileo.
to presentation to?
Are you referring to the Galileo, that
Yeah.
you sent me an email for the Galileo? So as my response to you, just for your knowledge, after the last presentation, Linda asked for the first benchmark results. And unfortunately, at this time, we're getting ready for state testing, and I'm getting the platforms ready, and didn't have time to accumulate all of that data and put it in a format. But as soon as I can provide that to you.
Please do.
Okay? Thank you.
All right. Kelsey? Thanks.
Thanks, Renee.
All right. Good evening. I'm excited to get to talk to you a little bit tonight about Beyond Textbooks and show you some of the resources and why we are so excited about possibly continuing with them and why we're partnering with Beyond Textbooks. So, what I would like to do is show you some of the documents, and I will pass those out to you right now. Brian, would you pass those down for me? But I'm going to show you the website at the same time. So, what you see up here is what teachers have access to. And so, I'm just going to log in. And just to set the context again, for those of you who don't remember what Beyond Textbook is, it's a company that the Vail School District has created for teacher-created instructional resources around standards-based instruction. And so they have put together a variety and a really nice, diverse set of resources for all of our teachers. So when our teachers log into this platform, this is exactly what they will see. So what's nice is that Vail offers a lot of professional development opportunities. You can see this one. They're guiding you to a bank of resources that they have on PD. But then you also have access to everything here. So if you're a 6th grade math teacher, you don't just have access to 6th grade math. You actually could access the grade levels above and below if you're looking for supplemental materials. But the first piece I want to show you is actually a 3rd grade reading resource. So if I was a 3rd grade teacher, I would click on our K through 5 section here. You can see each of our grade levels have resources for math, reading, writing, social studies, and science, but we're going to go down to 3rd grade reading. And so here, where we're guiding our teachers to, this first page is the summary of standards, and that is actually the first page that you have right in front of you. So here, yours looks a little different because I printed out the printout format for you. But what you can see is their scope and sequence of the standards for reading for 3rd grade for the year. So for quarter 1, they have decided these are the essential standards that they're going to focus on in quarter 1. Now the big question is that all they're teaching? No. However, these are the standards that they want students to be proficient in before they move forward. And the way that those were selected is we know that those are essential for success in future content or future grade levels. And so what you can do, once you come here and you can see all of those standards, is you can click on the standard that you want. So the one that you guys have in front of you right now is the 3rd grade reading information, standard 9. And so here, when I click on this, this is where it links to all of the documents that you have in front of you. And you can see that they have correlated listening and speaking standards to that one reading standard. But the piece that I want to point you in the right direction of is the unwrapped document, which is the second document that you have on that packet. When we get information from the state and we look at our standards document, this right here is what we are given. So for this standard, it says compare and contrast the most important points and key details presented in 2 texts on the same topic. That's what they give us. And so we could give that same standard to 3 different teachers, and they all might have a different idea of what proficiency means for that standard. So what these unwrapped documents have done is really clarify for us what does proficiency mean and what can teachers do to ensure that students are proficient on that standard. So when you read further, it gives you performance level descriptors. It shows you what students are doing through progressing through that standard. So proficient is the expectation of that standard. But we know we've got students who are ready for more challenging material, which is where that highly proficient learning target comes in. So it gives us extension, but it also gives us stepping stones to work towards if students aren't ready for proficiency yet. What can we do if they're minimally proficient? What can we do to get them to partially proficient? And what do we need to do to get them to proficient? And then you go down and you see additional information. What do students really need to be able to know in order to be proficient on that standard? So here, they need to be able to do strategic thinking. Again, this is not all information that the state gives us in one place for our teachers. You also have big ideas. What's the important concept within that standard? What are the essential questions that we can focus on? What's the essential vocabulary we need to make sure that students understand around that? And this here is one of my very favorite pieces. So you get to see prior learning, current learning, and future learning. Where is the student coming from in that standard, and where are they going to? So for ELA standards, most of the time you're going to see a nice progression. For 3rd grade, they were working on the same standard in 2nd grade, and they're going to build on that same standard again in 4th grade. What you'll see in some science standards, which was pretty surprising to us, is that there's sometimes you have a 6th grade standard that they haven't seen since 2nd grade. So it's really nice to be able to see, okay, it's been a while since they've been exposed to this concept. I'm going to need to do some more front loading to get them ready. Again, you also have correlated speaking and listening standards attached. You have ways for them to analyze tasks that they're giving students regarding this standard. Misconceptions. This is maybe my second favorite part of this whole document. You might have experienced teachers who know this because they've taught this standard over and over. They know what kids are going to encounter, what problems they're going to have as they're interacting with this content. This gives them some nice things to keep in mind as they're planning their lessons for this standard. So it's really expert tips and tricks that they can keep in mind. And then at the very end, they have a model product. If students are proficient in this standard, they should be able to do this that they have in front of them. Now, is this the exact thing that they need? No, they can do variations of this, but it gives teachers a place to start. They can customize that, they can replicate it. They have a really good idea of what it means to be proficient for that standard. So again, you've taken a one-sentence expectation from the state, and you've provided 4 pages of resources around what that means. What you'll also see within your packet that you have are formative assessments for teachers to use. Uh-oh, dropping things, sorry. So within this this page for the standard, you can see that there's formative assessments here, and they have them in multiple varieties for teachers. They've got multiple choice, they've got extended response. They also have Google versions, so teachers can assign these through Google Classroom for students to do. They have rubrics, and then there's additional resources here that connect to outside supplemental supports. So what you have in front of you is the first formative assessment that teachers can give students after instruction in order to assess whether students are proficient or not. That'll guide future teaching opportunities. The nice part is there's multiple versions of this, so you can teach and then assess, reteach those students who need it, and reassess them on a different assessment. They also have multiple versions. So you have multiple choice formative assessments, but you also have extended response assessments. Bless you.
Bless you.
So all of this that you see in front of you is information that teachers would have in front of them as they plan for that lesson or that week. How am I going to teach the standard? How am I going to assess it? So it's nice that they have the assessment in front of them for that backwards design. They know the end expectation, and they're building their instruction to meet that, but they're using all of those unwrapped documents in order to help get them where they need to be. So what it is offering our teachers is a lot more clarity around what that standard means and what proficiency is, and how do they assess where their students are as far as proficiency. So what you have in front of you is really the reason that we looked at Beyond Textbooks, because these are the resources that our teaching teams had started creating at the beginning of last year. But this alone would have taken us 3 to 5 years to get to where Beyond Textbook is. Because if you look at all of this was just for one standard. For each content, we have anywhere from 20 to 40 standards we would have to do this on, along with all of our other initiatives and other trainings that we would have. So this is providing us a really great resource on a much shorter time frame. That's why we decided to do that. But I'm also going to show you, or have an example of math, because that is just as powerful. So thank you for passing that out, Brian. Absolutely.
On the extended response,
Yes.
those are, is this kind of the structure of the assessment exams?
Yes.
Does this follow that? So how subjective is that evaluation?
Good question.
Is there someone at the state that's assessing that and saying, well, I think this person is doing okay on the extended response, but this person didn't?
Yeah.
How do we know that this is actually a fair evaluation?
Question. Yeah. So for most of the extended response, these types of questions are going to be in the writing prompt for our Arizona assessment. That we have very specific rubrics of what is expected. So teachers are teaching that through writing. More so what you're going to see on the state assessment for reading, math, and science are the multiple choice pieces. But we know that we shouldn't just assess students in one way. We want to provide them multiple ways of showing and demonstrating knowledge. That multiple choice is important because it does help prepare them for that state assessment, but we also do get other really good information as far as guiding instruction from those extended response tests as well. And so teacher teams, when they're collaborating and planning and looking at how they're going to create those instructional programs for them, are going to look at what's the best assessment to choose that's going to help get the knowledge that we need to decide whether students are proficient and what we need to do to adjust instruction.
So our teachers are using all of this, even though the assessment is more likely going to be multiple choice.
For the writing assessment, there is they do write an essay at various grade levels, and you're exactly right. There's a team of teachers who are selected to do that grade it. But they try to be as objective as possible based on a rubric that's widely used and widely known, and we use that same one to
Correct.
prepare kids, just like Kelsey was saying.
Yes.
But ultimately, you're right, there is an element of subjectivity to that, and we kind of cross our fingers that the people who are reading the essays that kids write, the papers, the whatnot, the responses that kids write, view that the same way that we did as we were preparing them to do well on the test.
So what you will see if you look in the very last page of that reading assessment is that they do have keys for those assessments. So this one does say answers will vary, ensure students will have 2 separate examples of differences, and that each example is supported with evidence from the text. So as long as they have those essential elements in there, they know that they're hitting that mark and that they could consider them proficient. If not, it gives them very specific ways to help support them so that they can meet that expectation.
But even
Yeah.
if you look at the multiple choice questions for 3rd grade reading, you can see that the students have to go back to the text and find the evidence to answer that question correctly. So it's multiple choice, but there's still a level of complexity to it.
The other piece that we are talking through with teachers and that we will continue to support is these are one-choice answers. That's not exactly what, especially 3rd graders, will see on the state assessment. They're taking those all on the computer. So if we do continue to move forward with Beyond Textbooks, we are going to use their assessment platform, which these will be in. So it has what's called tech-enhanced questions. And so those do a better job of preparing them for what they'll see on that state assessment. There's times where students will have to choose multiple answers that are correct within a set of multiple choice questions. They will have to put pieces together. Sometimes there's 2, 3, 4 answers within one question. So it builds in complexity, and that platform is really where we see most of that happening. And yeah. Nope, you're good. No, I was going to say Galileo right now is what we have that helps us with that tech-enhanced piece.
And
so they have,
that's what I was going
yeah,
to ask.
they have
How does
questions.
it line up with Galileo? And how much time will it take a teacher to have to do this? Because this is a lot of corrective, and data assessments.
Yes. So this Galileo assesses standards. That's what they're focusing on. And so they're assessing standards in a very similar way. What we're doing with the Beyond Textbooks scope, let me come back here, is instead of testing with Galileo the 3 times a year, so beginning of year, mid-year, end of year, on standards that they might not have been exposed to yet, the idea and the philosophy changes a little bit. So what you see with the essential standards in quarter 1, those are the standards that we are just going through this process with and assessing on that formative to know where students are, because we know that those are the most essential standards that they need. Then at the end of quarter 1, we would give a benchmark to see how much they've retained that information, and we'll use that for further intervention or enrichment opportunities as needed. So we'll have more frequent check-ins. Will they take as long? Probably not. Students only take Galileo 3 times a year, and there's anywhere from 25 to 40 questions on that. Sometimes that can take students 2.5, sometimes 3 hours, depending on the student. These will be 25 questions, and there'll be things that they know that they have been exposed to. It's content that they've already been taught. So those will go much faster. They will be more frequent, but they will be a lot less time intensive.
So, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask, can they take these assessments on the computer?
Yes. So they can either take them right now paper pencil in the formats that you see in front of you. They can take them in Google Form version, which is an online kind of survey format. Or next year, if we decide to move forward with that assessment platform, they'll be able to take that within that platform as well, which is very similar to the Galileo style of question.
In place of Galileo?
Yes.
We will be evaluating.
Yes.
If we certainly don't want to do redundant assessments. So that is a piece we intend to evaluate.
Correct.
To see, what makes sense.
And this year we have been piloting this with staff to say, is there enough here within Beyond Textbooks to continue our partnership with them moving forward? Or do we want to continue with the work that we had been doing? It will take longer to have these documents completed and these resources for teachers, but we're in that process right now of evaluating that.
So will it replace the digs then, or what will it replace what we're already doing?
So it won't replace our digs. What we might do is teachers might look at their digs differently and decide to reorder them. But what you see here is essentially what we have on a dig. It's the pacing of our standards throughout the year. So it won't replace, it just might, the teachers might update them, which honestly we do every year. Teachers are always looking at, can we do this better? Is it better to do something before another standard or after?
And so we could implement this in the next school year?
It's already being implemented in lots of places. It's just system-wide. If we decide to move forward, yes, it would be system-wide next year.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this has been around for a while, especially throughout the Vail School District.
Yes.
And what is your elevator speech as to why this is just caught on and why teachers love it and why it's so successful?
So I want to go back to the unwrapped document that I had out. Let's see. As a teacher, I was given that one sentence. And I was expected to have all this information about what really the expectation is, how to teach it, what depth of knowledge the students need to be able to understand that information at. Everybody was teaching them a little bit different. Even curriculums are teaching them a little bit different. They have a different interpretation of what this means. So what this unwrapped document does is offer a lot of clarity around here's exactly what that expectation is. And me, Mr. Binder, who teach next door to each other, we have the same expectation for kids. We might be able to approach it different through instructional, preferences, how we teach that, but as long as we're teaching to that same expectation. But I can also go, Mr. Binder, how did you teach that? Your kids just knocked that out of the park. Let's work together on that. So it's really going to help with collaboration, and it helps really move students forward when we have the same expectation, and then we have the same assessments that are monitoring that expectation.
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, any
Can
other
I
questions?
give my elevator speech?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I'm expecting the teachers over there going, wow, this is so amazing, because I can't even imagine as a teacher what it would have been like to have this, to know what knowledge they have coming in on that standard, what they need during my instruction, what they are going to learn the next year, what those pro tips are, things to plan for that might be misconceptions, to be able to take a look at the blooms and depth of knowledge that this standard requires, because what the state gives us is so little information. To me, this would make me feel like an expert teacher. Like I know where my students are coming from and where they need to go and how I can get them there. What does highly proficient look like? What are they looking for on the state test for highly proficient? I mean, I'm like envious. I wish when I was a teacher, I had documents like this.
And we did in California, we have.
Well, we don't
Yes.
here, Linda, and I'm super
And that's-
excited.
That's great, and I think that that's what we really need here.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad to see it coming this way.
Right.
Because it has worked, and doesn't Vail have really good test scores?
They do.
And really good student success?
And I don't know if you remember when Kelsey did that analysis on curriculum, and we looked at the top 10 districts and how many times was beyond textbooks in there.
And Vail,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
It's because they have a lot of clarity and they're testing what the expectation is and adjusting instruction immediately to help meet those needs. So
And the formative assessments that we have that we can all use that are the same, I mean, just creating those formative assessments is so time intensive.
That's one of
I
the
mean, I'm
high
just,
points of this that I
you
was-
can copy the
Yeah.
PDF on this and give it to a guest teacher, or you can put it on the computer. You can keep instruction going in your classroom with this. I don't know. I'll sell it, baby.
It's not too late.
That's super cool. We've
Teachers
been
are really
asking,
Retire.
yeah,
we've been asking teachers for years to do common assessments, and we see the value in that and whatnot, but, and teachers do as well. They say, absolutely, but when do we sit down? What do we choose? when do we find the time for that? Those have been real open questions. We've been working toward this a little bit, but when we were made aware, hey, the product you're working toward, there's a cool version of that already available. We looked into it and we're like, this is pretty cool.
And this tells you how many days to spend on that standard.
Yeah, I saw
Right?
that,
As a
yeah.
teacher, I don't know. I'm like, I think they got it.
Maybe you won't retire then.
I don't know. Maybe I'll go sell Beyond Textbooks for Vail.
Fantastic.
Be in the
Bad
area.
deal.
You have to work on your enthusiasm
All
first.
right.
Yeah, it's pretty lacking, Marty.
Does it cover all the benchmarks or all the standards, or are they just picking the ones that they think are the more important ones? Between the front and the back of this, is this all the
Correct.
math standards for 8th grade or not?
Yes.
Yes, it is?
So between the front and the back, yes, that is all of the standards for 8th grade math.
Okay,
What
thank
you
you.
will see is in each of the quarters, they have those essential standards. Those are the standards that absolutely have to be mastered before a student moves on to the next grade level. What you see at the very end are the math yearly standards or math additional standards. They're not saying that those aren't taught, they're just not assessed to the same level of proficiency that those essential standards are. Sometimes they're taught just throughout the year, but there's still a focus on them. And the nice part is you can see where those come into play, where they fit them into their calendar.
All right. Thanks, Kelsey.
You're welcome.
Tremendous. Thanks for all your leadership, too, on bringing this to us and insight.
It's exciting, it's very exciting.
All right. Next item is item 7C, math teacher stipends. Mr. Tenney.
Okay, do you have something for me? Oh, super, okay. So we've talked about this in the past. Our math scores, particularly in 7th and 8th grade, aren't where we want them to be. We want them to be higher. We're higher than the state average in every other area and every other grade. And that it's stubbornly, our math scores have not been moving. There's a number of reasons for that, but we've identified several. One is we haven't had resources like this available to us in the past, so we're hopeful that this resource being available and telling teachers very explicitly, here's what you've got, here's where kids need to be, here's a good way to get them there, and here's the resources for it, that'll help a bunch. You know as well that we're looking right now into, we've got a committee that has met a few times and has narrowed down to 2, right? Is that right? 2 potential new math curricula for 7th and 8th grade, and we're piloting those right now, so we feel that's going to be part of the moving the needle on our math scores, is getting a solid updated curriculum that matches well with the state standards and can go along with this Beyond Textbooks, these other resources that we've got there. Another piece, we know 2 other pieces are, we need to build the capacity of our math teachers at all levels, but particularly 7th and 8th grade, help them to be even better math teachers. And we need to attract the best ones out there and retain the best ones that we have. And so to those last 2 areas of trying to move the needle on our math scores, help with our student learning there, we talked with the board before about the idea of stipends for teachers. We've been doing this for special education teachers for years. You probably recall for a long time we had a very hard time, like everybody else, recruiting and retaining special education teachers. We knew that was an area of need for us. Other districts obviously have that problem as well, so we said, hey, this is what all teachers get paid. Let's pay special education teachers a little bit more, particularly in our most challenging classes. That has been a game changer for us. We're able to recruit for those classes and retain good teachers in a way that we hadn't before. So we said, let's try this for math. We want to recruit and retain the best people. Let's look at stipends for math teachers. We don't offer stipends to people without asking them to do extra. We don't say, hey, here's a little extra money because math teachers are hard to find. So we've talked to you before. We want to follow the model that we've used for special education teachers. Special education teachers, depending on which classes they're in, receive a stipend of $5,000, $8,000, or $10,000 a year premium on top of the regular salary. Not celery. We actually don't give them very much celery. Some people like that, some people don't. It just became problematic. So we do a salary, however, and on top of that, 301 money and then a stipend for SPED teachers. We're going to do that for math teachers going forward. We've reported to you. As we talked with the Prescott Unified School District Education Foundation about this, they said, that's fantastic. We want to help with math scores. We can help fund that. So they have committed $35,000 every year going forward until they choose to not do so, to help us with that. That's great because, as you'll hear a little bit later tonight, we're in a tight budget situation, and it might have been impossible to get that off the ground this next year, excuse me. But because of that $35,000, we're going to be able to do that. Next year, we'll be offering to our 7th and 8th grade math teachers, that's what we have funds available for right now, $5,000 a month stipend, and if we scroll down a little bit there, Sarah, you can see what we're going to ask them to do in return. One is to be a qualified math teacher and to work for us. That's a tough hill to climb in some cases already. That's part one. Part two, though, is we're going to ask them to build their capacity as a teacher. We're going to ask them to do 15 professional development hours each year, as outlined there. They'll be working with their principals to determine which of the options available to them in terms of professional development are going to most target the needs that we have in our classes and how they'll collaborate together, et cetera. We're also going to require them to do peer observations, evaluate what they saw in the classes that they went to see and how they can implement the best parts of that in their classes, et cetera, sort of cross-pollinate good ideas, so to speak. And then there's additional coaching support that comes with this as well. So we're pretty excited about this for essentially no cost to the district. We'll be able to do this on the 7th and 8th grade level this first year. Now, ideally, we'd love to do this with all of our secondary math positions. The area of the greatest need in terms of the turnover that we've had, and obviously test scores and maybe need to build teacher capacity, we've identified obviously a 7th and 8th grade. So we're starting there. PUSD Education Foundation has targeted money for there. Going forward, if we're in a budget situation that we can do so, I'd like to do the very same thing for 5th grade, 6th grade, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade teachers as well. We've talked with all of those teachers about that's our vision for that. So in the future, we hope and expect to come back to the board with that. In the meantime, we don't need you to vote on this as part of our budget package because it's not part of our budget package. This is a gift and donation for a very specific cause that's coming to us from one of our greatest supporters, the PUSD Education Foundation, which we love. The last piece that I'll share with you is that as we look toward that vision of expanding it all the way to fit from 5th grade to 12th grade, we've noticed the next greatest area of need is 6th grade. Not quite as high as 7th and 8th grade in terms of scores and turnover and whatnot, but nearly there. So we're going to start doing that already. We don't have a lot of extra funds, but the $35,000 that the Education Foundation will donate toward this cause each year allows us to do this for all of the 7th and 8th grade teachers, plus have a little bit left over for 6th grade teachers. So this first year we're looking at and to clarify, our 6th grade teachers teach both math and science. Half their time is math, half their time is science. So they're half-time math teachers. We're looking at a $2,000 stipend for this year for them, with the additional funds that basically come from the PUSD Education Foundation, with a smaller requirement for professional development, again, because that's half of what they're doing. Do you have questions about any of that?
This might be to Kelsey or Clark, I'm not sure, but I'm backtracking a tiny bit. The new curriculum we're looking at for 7th and 8th grade, is it going to mesh with beyond textbooks well? And then I can see maybe where these coaches would play a bigger role with beyond textbooks too, and see how they mesh for their teachers.
I don't love the term, but we're throwing everything we have at this. Okay. We are going to move the needle on test scores, particularly for 7th and 8th grade, and all of these are parts of it. And we really feel like getting good folks and keeping good folks, that's harder to do all the time. Andy Binder can tell you. After special education teachers, the hardest job category to hire for, probably bus drivers, but then after that, it's math teachers, and particularly in middle school. But we feel like this is going to help us.
And the exciting thing that happened with this adoption that we haven't been able to do with the other ones is we have those unwrapped documents for standards. So we were able to take an unwrapped standard for one of those essential standards and lay out 4 different curriculum and how is it teaching it in each of these and which one meets these expectations better. So we're able to look at curriculum in a very different way than we've ever been able to, because we have very clear expectations for those standards.
New curriculum, additional resources for teachers, recruiting the best, retaining the best, and additional professional development. We're trying to hit everything we can to move the needle here. If you've got additional ideas, we're super open to them. But pretty much everything we've thought of that we have the resources for, we're going to do. One of the questions that somebody had was, how do high school teachers feel about this? How do 5th grade teachers feel about this? They're excited about the vision that we have to expand that out. In the meantime, it is true, if we've got a high school teacher who says, I want to make $5,000 more teaching math next year, guess what? We've got some middle school positions available that they could look at. So we're not trying to shift everything around a bunch, but it's possible that one or two people might look and say, ooh, you've got a math position open at the middle school? Never thought of that before, but I'm thinking of it now. So we'll see how that goes.
All right.
Mr. Neely doesn't like that much, but he's been great about it.
Yeah. All right, thanks. Thanks, PUSD Education Foundation, too.
Absolutely. That's a substantial investment that, again, we just don't have the budget funds for. I wish that we did. And hopefully, going forward, the state will say, wow, continuing to fund education at the lowest level in the United States is not working for us. Just complaining about test scores doesn't do it. Maybe we should invest. And if they do invest, super, we'll have the money to expand this out. In the meantime, we'll do what we can.
Thanks, Clerk. All right, item 8A, summary of current events. Mr. Tenney.
Okay, I've got just a quick handful of things. One is that we've always solicited tax credit donations for the district. As you probably know, it's on our website. We occasionally send out letters to people. We'll have it in newsletters. Hey, if you're, as you're filling out your taxes, if you want to make a tax credit donation, please do that. And we've been fairly successful. We receive tax credit donations in PUSD at a rate that's disproportionate to most other districts in Arizona. But we feel like we can do even better with that. We've had times in the past when we've been more targeted and pointed and active, robust in our efforts there, and it's brought in additional tax credit donations. So this year, Marty's gotten on top of this and has worked with Julia Rula, who's our marketing director, and one of the things that they've done is include information about how you can make a tax credit donation in the, was it Money in the Mail? Is that what it is, Marty? That Valpak? Which one is it? Valpak, there you go, the Valpak thing.
Did anyone see it? Did anyone get a postcard?
This is an actual copy of a postcard that came to my house. We targeted certain areas within zip codes in Prescott that people have shown to be generous from those areas of town in terms of their donations toward things in the past. This is the one that came to my house. It worked. I made a tax credit donation shortly after I got it. I'm hopeful other people will follow that same pattern. So anyhow, wanted you to know about that. And it's an opportunity for us to share with the community, again, our success in terms of an A grade. We've had people say for years, I'm not going to give you guys a dime until you show me you're successful. Okay, well, we're successful. Where's the dimes? We'll see how that works. Next. We had a challenge coin recipient this last month. Mr. Galagassi, do you want to talk about this really quick? Or Mr.
yeah.
Freyer, either?
Well, Andy, you could. Yeah,
would you?
Please. Andy, go ahead.
Do you mind telling us a little bit more about Mrs. Bailey's challenge coin? Yes.
Yeah, we had a nomination submitted for Tiffany Bailey, who is our CTE director at PHS, just for the work that she's done in putting together new programs for growing the programs that we have. If you're not aware, the number of students enrolled in our CTE programs has increased dramatically. The number of PHS students that go off campus to earn those certificates that they can use immediately after they finish high school and be in the workforce, or to use it for college credit, has grown dramatically as well. So we're really pleased with the direction that this has taken. And, she was awarded a challenge coin in February for doing that.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. The board has expressed in the recent past that growing our partnership with the CTED district and offering additional vocational opportunities for our students is a priority for them. So as you know, that's one of my superintendent goals, and Tiffany Bailey is the person who's making that happen. So I really appreciate you getting with her that day and presenting her the challenge coin. She's spectacular. Next. Several of our schools this next week, Mr. Neely, right? We've got the Future Freshman Night at Prescott High School. Mr. Neely and a handful of his teachers and academic advisors went down to the middle school recently to present to them, hey, here's what you're coming up to, here's the opportunities that we've got, et cetera. And then those students, along with their parents, have the opportunity to go to the high school. Same thing happens at each of our transition points, 4th to 5th grade, and 6th grade to 7th grade. I'm getting all the grades right? Yeah, good. Anyhow, from Granite to Mile High. And this is for our elementary school students who are looking to go to Granite Mountain the next year. We had a Granite Grizzly night just here a week ago or so. I was able to attend that. It was spectacular. I loved it. Every about 4 minutes or so, they had a tour group leaving from the library, just as people, they got critical mass. They went around and looked at different areas of the campus and talked about the programs that take place in those areas, the different opportunities students have for, here's how we do math, here's how we do reading, here's how we do science, here's how we do art, etc. Down, you can see the shed there kind of on the right-hand side, just to the right of that. They were making s'mores for kids. Nobody got burned that I know of. That's a positive. I just pulled out my phone and took a real quick snapshot of the group that I was in. couple of groups that were just moving from s'mores into the art room, people that were moving along the top mezzanine there. There were hundreds of people there. I thought, there are going to be a few dozen people here. This will be nice. Hundreds. It was great. Super cool to see the energy around and excitement around Granite Mountain, in addition to all of our schools. Next, another couple of happenings. Anybody to give us a quick update on the Teacher Village at Taylor Hicks?
Great news. We have all 4 of the PUSD units filled, and the 2 that the city are running are, one's filled, and I believe the last one they have somebody lined up for. So, but for the 4 we were trying to get filled, we have it filled through June.
Which is terrific.
Just add something to that. At the teacher's closet on Thursday night, the last teacher who got the last house at the Teacher Ridge was at the teacher's closet, and she was over the moon. She said, I can't even believe that I can get into a house like this for right now at this price, and I can use the rest of my time looking around and finding something for next year.
Everyone
So-
I've talked to, all of them
Yeah,
are over the
she
moon
was
right
so
now. They are
excited,
very excited.
so excited. It was fun.
And again, we don't intend this to be, current staff, something cool for them. It's not something we can offer to all of our 450 plus staff members. It'll be a huge recruiting tool for us going forward, you know that. But right now, we're really glad to be able to offer something additional to the folks who have a housing need for us, who work for us now. And it's great that they're all in use.
I was shopping at a local vendor, actually. It was a car dealership, and the salesman actually approached, and we were talking, and she's like, well, my wife works for PUSD. I'm like, oh, isn't that great? So do I. And then she said, and we live at Taylor Hicks. And I'm like, I don't know
wonder
what
if
you
it was
found.
the same one.
It turns out they were in dire need of housing, and this absolutely saved them. And so just ran into someone, and they were just touting PUSD, and they didn't even know that. That
It's
was
super
part of
cool.
it.
I'm glad that we weren't able to touch our regular maintenance and operation budget and still have this opportunity to help us recruit going forward. Maybe that'll move the needle on math scores as well. It's budget season in schools, as you know. We talked about that a bunch tonight. The disconnect that we have is the legislature is still doing their regular work, and they won't pass a budget until May or June. Last year was even later. And we're making some projections on what funding they might make available to us, as we do every year. This year, it's a pretty easy guess what more they'll make available to us, which is nothing. There's a huge hole in the state budget. Most estimates are around the $400 million level for the deficit that they're going to have to make up in terms of what they committed to ongoing funding last year and what they'll be able to commit to it this year. So we're not anticipating more money to come to schools other than what they're legally required by law to do. The 2 main issues that have led us to the budget situation we're in Arizona is the new flat tax that was passed a couple of years ago, and then ESA vouchers. Those 2 things are having a major impact on the budget. And will have an impact on us as well. I've had people ask, what impact are ESAs having on PUSD? Well, less than much of the rest of the state. We'll talk a little bit later. In fact, it's right there. Mesa Unified School District, it was in the news just a couple of days ago, is cutting 385 teacher and parapro positions in classrooms. That is massive. That will have a big impact on their class sizes and their offerings and people's lives in a lot of ways. We're in a very different situation. You know that our neighboring districts reported at the beginning of the year they're down a little bit in enrollment for the first time in a while. We were actually up just a little bit in enrollment, we've reported to you, so we're in a different situation that way, which is good. One impact that it will have on us is we're certainly not expecting any additional money this year. Do we need additional money? We absolutely do. I would love to be able to hire the best math teachers around, for instance. We're going to do what we can with what we've got. The other impact that it's having is not on our overall enrollment, as I reported to you. We're actually growing a little bit. Most of that growth, though, is at the high school. In the kindergarten level, we're down about 35 kids compared to what we were last year. That's a huge percentage of our kindergartners. And we suspect, based on what we're hearing reported statewide and what we know from other districts, they're seeing a similar thing. The state gives us about $3,500 per kindergartner for the per pupil funding. But if I'm a parent and I say, I'd really rather keep my kid home one more year, I can get myself a free voucher for $7,300. And a lot of people are saying, that's a great way to make $7,300. I'll just send my kid to school later. So it's having some impact on us for sure. Will it have an impact on those kids? Possibly. that remains to be seen. Another issue with budget season is that, we've been fortunate to have ESSER grant funding over the last few years, Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Recovery Act funding, that helped us with a lot of the safety procedures that we had in place, and then helping fill the gaps that we have for student learning based on COVID. That's expiring, and a lot of districts are impacted heavily by that. You'll hear later on tonight that we're not impacted very heavily by that because we were very strategic about how we used our ESSER funding. We will be cutting a few positions, but not many overall, certainly not in the same situation as Mesa, and we won't be cutting any positions without talking with those staff and saying, hey, here's some other options for you. So nobody's being cast adrift as they are in some other places. And then the last thing I want to report to you is that because it's budget season and we're handing out contracts hopefully tomorrow morning, we've been asking people, are you coming back next year? And so far, Andy, what can you report to us on that?
So yeah, we're going to get to that in a little bit, but right now we are at 22 folks who have let us know that they won't be returning, but that's from a turnover rate or ratio, that's much lower than the state average, and we're pretty pleased with that. So we have really, after the budget cuts, no one that we weren't able to find a position for right now. So excited about that.
Okay, and then the last slide, I believe here. This is just brand new. As of Friday, about Friday afternoon, the Auditor General released their report for the year. It compares districts in a number of different ways and gives all sorts of data about districts. Here's how they did with their spending. Here's how they did with their achievement. Here's how much teachers get paid. Here's the teacher-student ratios, et cetera, et cetera. Our test scores, this is the first, we knew what our test scores were, right? That's been reported to you, but it's the first opportunity we've had to compare head-to-head against the other districts in Arizona as we've done in the past. You remember last year our ELA scores were in the top 16%. They've moved to the top 15% compared to other districts. Our math scores were in the top 24%. They've moved up to 20%. That's a huge move forward compared to other districts. Our science scores went backwards compared to other districts. We were in the top 16% before, and we've moved backwards to the top 22%. So we're going to take a good look at that and see how they compare other ways. We compare very favorably to our neighboring districts, but we want to be among the very best in Arizona in everything. And we are in most respects as far as our test scores are concerned. The other piece, you know that we were very high in classroom spending, among the highest, and among the lowest in administrative spending among our peer groups, districts that have a similar budget system, similar number of kids and whatnot. We were able to do the comparisons with our district group. We are #1 in the entire state in our peer group for most percentage of our budget that goes into the classroom. You can see our percentage versus the state average, and the absolute lowest in the state of Arizona among similar districts for administrative spending. Again, is that a good question or a good result? Maybe not, maybe. There's philosophical differences there, but I know that it's what some of our community expects is for us to be as close to the bone as we can possibly be in administrative spending. We are. If you're interested in more of this, we'd be happy to report to you in more depth about the State Auditor General's report next month. We can have a discussion at that point as well, if you'd like.
Let's do that.
That's my report for you.
Great, thanks.
I have a few questions.
We can do that when this is agendized for a discussion item. We can't do it when it's just the report. So if you have individual questions, super happy to do that. But as far as the agendized part of the meeting, we can't do that right here.
Item 8A2, governing board members. Andy, you have anything to report?
Yeah, just a couple things. I just want to say I really appreciate the school newsletters that we get every week from the different schools. That is so helpful in letting us know what's going on in our schools, even though I may not get to every single one of them. And I do pay particular attention to the high school one because I visit the high school regularly. I also want to point out, is Mr. Neely still here?
Yeah, he is.
That the PHS Good News, if you don't get that and read that, you really need to, because that's a fantastic view of what's really happening at the high school and the good things that are going on there. I want to give a shout out to Valerie Jeffries for the work that she does in putting that together from the check-in station out there. She really does a great job with that. So that's all I have. Oh, the last thing, sorry. I did attend, we had the CTE fair at the high school last week. Can't remember, I should have counted the number, but there was veterinary assisting, there was fire science, aviation construction, culinary, medical. The National Guard was there to visit with our students, and I was there for the first lunch, which was mostly freshmen. And just kids were everywhere talking to these representatives. It was really encouraging to see them at such a young age getting so excited about all the different areas, not just, veterinary got a lot of people, and fire science got a lot of kids because they got to put the turnouts on and everything. But they were at every station talking to all of the representatives there. And it was really encouraging to see. That's all I have.
Good. Great. Linda?
What?
Do you have anything to report?
Community news.
No, I'm still recovering
Yep.
from my foot surgery,
All
so
right. How's that going?
it's going great.
Good. You bet. All right. Cara?
No, I've been laying low.
Laying low. All right.
I have a couple things.
Yeah.
I went to the first ever Discovery Gardens open house.
Nice.
First one ever, standing room only. It was kind of a kick to see the little ones that are thinking about being prospective PUSD students. So that was pretty exciting. I figured if it went well this year with just the first time, next year will be even better. So that was pretty fun. Took in a couple of the girls' soccer games and a couple of the boys' basketball games. It's kind of fun to see that. I went to the professional development to take a refresher course on Excel and realized I don't know anything about Excel like I thought I did. So I learned a lot there. And then last was the teacherage, which was pretty fun. So fun stuff.
Thanks, Jane. I know we have a lot to report on sports, right? Kevin and Ava, you're going to be doing that? Awesome. Okay, there are some things in this good news I just want to point out. When we get these, there's some things that you may just read across, and when I look at it, there's a little more depth to them. So like, for instance, on the PHS Variety Show on February 23rd in the theater, they did a tremendous job, but what was apparent to me is that the people that put this on were Taft Mangum, Josie Savawini, and Joseph Sardi. These are three and fourth generation families that the kids are following in their footsteps, these families, and just doing a tremendous job, just carrying on the tradition. So I just thought that's really cool. Obviously, being involved is just as their families have throughout this community.
Taft's grandpa is staring at you right now from
I
that
know,
board.
it always does. Got a molar right here that he worked on. So, anyway, and then the PHS mock trial took first, second, and third place. Were you guys going to talk about that one at all? Yeah, all right, good deal. Well, and Krista Carmen, who, she was instrumental in the Prescott Unified Education Foundation starting up, and she's still involved. And I just, even though she's a judge and she can't be in part of a nonprofit, she's still helping out. So I think that's a pretty tremendous deal. And then we highlighted everybody there. When Alleract came here through the Rotary Club, our kids, we just have tremendous kids, and we have kids that. They represent not only the school but our community. They go to Mexico, they go to Kenya, and Sophia Brown and Cadence Brewer. Sophia's going to Kenya and Cadence is going to Mexico. It says here that they're two of the 5 high school students on their respective teams chosen from all of northern Arizona, including the Phoenix area. So they just don't hand these out to anybody, right? So we have just, again, a great example of tremendous kids we have in this area. For my school, reporting on the Lincoln Lions, we have the Read Across America Spirit Week this week, and then Reading and Feeding Celebration Assembly that's occurring on Thursday at 1 o'clock that I'll be attending. And then we have spring break the following week, so everybody's ready to go there. All right, so Kevin and Ava, your reports?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right.
So, I think it was alluded to, but our basketball team won their home playoff game and then proceeded to go down to Phoenix and lose to what ended up being the state champions. So, second in my heart.
Yeah. They made it to the Elite 8, is that correct?
Yeah.
And won the region, right?
Yes.
Pretty tremendous. And they haven't done that in 22 years, something like that. Pretty amazing. So,
It was a long time.
yeah, long time.
Before your time.
Before my time. Before Ava's time too.
Thanks for the clarification.
Nice.
We're the same age, just
Yeah. Okay.
And then,
We're right on it.
in a more, it's been brought up a lot, but in this coming month-ish, plus Aspire. So that's I've just learned the more important test among the state standards. So good to prepare for that one. And
Yes,
then
sir.
there's also a blood drive going on this week at PHS. And finally, it's like this whole month, at least for seniors, is when college decisions are kind of coming out and kids are finding out if they're going to school and if so where.
So funny you should mention that. So Ava, where are you heading? What are we talking here? Where's Hey, congratulations. That's awesome. And Kevin, where are you heading?
Columbia University.
Where's that?
That's the one in New York City.
Yeah, I know. I'm just messing. That's amazing. Yeah, very prestigious, both of those. Those are not easy to get into. Just how, just among your peers, what are we talking? Like people that are, where are they heading? Just your friends, like.
I think that, of course, like I would say vast majority is going to be your NAUs, ASUs, U of A's, GCUs. But then outside of that, I've talked to a couple of kids. I know one kid's going to U of O, or University of Oregon.
Yeah.
I know of a TCU, University of Hawaii, which is a fun one.
Yeah.
A Fordham.
Yeah. Fordham.
Yeah.
Jeez. Yeah.
And then I think that possibly next board meeting, there'll be a lot more kids
Sure.
that know where
They're applying. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for that.
I don't know that you two are a representative sample of all our kids. You're pretty spectacular, but it's kind of neat that both of you have been accepted for early acceptance at one of the most prestigious private schools on the East Coast and one of the most prestigious private schools in the Western United States. Congratulations to both of you. That's pretty cool.
Nice.
We're proud of you.
Guys. Ava.
Okay. There are several girls and boys soccer team players who took home regional honors, along with boys basketball. Boys volleyball is started headfirst into their season, along with boys baseball and girls softball.
Yeah.
And we start into AP testing soon, also at the high school.
Gotcha. No snow on the fields right now, so we're okay. All right.
Mr. Galgaski, my ulcer flares up when people say snow, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that.
I'm sure it does. All right. Let's move on. Okay, so item 9, consent agenda. Or is there anything from the board that needs to get pulled at all on the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to pull the policy changes. I didn't have time. Our board book was over 300 pages that we got on Friday. So I've been looking a lot at the budget, but I didn't get to those. There's a lot of them too.
So, yeah, we're actually looking at the consent agenda now, and that's an information item later on that you won't be voting on. It's just a first read.
It doesn't, I'm not asking for it to be pulled then?
Yeah, we're
if
just
it's
talking
under
about the
consent.
consent agenda right now.
That's all.
We have to wait till we get to the
Oh,
state.
okay, I thought it was part of the consent.
Sure.
agenda.
And because it's the first read, it's just a discussion. There's nothing to vote on. So no board members will be asked whether or not they want for that to happen. It's already part of the agenda as is.
Okay. I'd like to just highlight item 9A2. That's the donations, and I'd like to read those. A donation from Kathy Holden in a check of amount of $50 to Discovery Gardens. A donation from Leah Rickrine for $300 to PHS S Clubs. Donation from Lamb Chevrolet for $400 to the Granite Mountain Pinewood Derby. Donation from the Sons of the American Revolution, a check in the amount of $100 for the PHS JROTC program. Donation from the City of Prescott Yavapai Indian Tribe, a check in the amount of $3,000 for all schools. A donation from Finley Toyota, a check in the amount of $566 to Granite Mountain STEAM program. A donation from the PUSD Ed Foundation, a check in the amount of $2,500 to the
MTM STEM grant.
oh, probably, yeah. MTM STEM grant. A donation from Ohio Pile Prints Incorporated in the amount of $81.90 to PHS Athletics. Donation to Prescott Hicks, You would think I would know.
I can help you pronounce it if
Jeez,
you
yeah,
want.
thank you. Taylor Hicks,
There you go.
PTA.
That's it. You got it.
Please don't tell anybody in the family. A check in the amount of $22,893.58 for the Taylor Hicks Carousel. Donation from Tammy Grauberger, a check in the amount of $100 for the PHS Wrestling program, and a donation from Corpay, a check in the amount of $500 for Farm to School. Thank you, everybody, for that.
Those are all super cool. I'll just highlight for you really quick, Mr. Goligoski, that $22,893 check from the Taylor Hicks PTA, that's how it's pronounced, by the way, Taylor Hicks. PTA is, as you mentioned, for a carousel, it's an accessible carousel, so students in wheelchairs, students with mobility issues, et cetera, can get on that. So that's an upgrade that we're really looking forward to on that playground, and something we hopefully can look toward at our other schools as well.
That's great. I broke an arm on that playground, so that's great. So. Yeah, I remember fine.
We're going to try to avoid that,
let's
actually,
please
with this
not do that.
particular
Okay,
apparatus.
All right, moving on to 9B. We do have a call to public.
We have to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'll consider, I'll take a motion for approving the consent agenda.
I make the motion that we approve the consent agenda.
A motion, of a second?
Second.
Motion, a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. Thanks, Sarah. And then item 9B, study and voting session. We do have a call to the public. Haley Reeder, and Haley, thanks for being patient. It takes us a long time to get there, but I do have something to read. It'll actually help make you feel more comfortable while you're standing up there, okay? So we're grateful that we have members from the public that are showing interest in this public process. Our governing board is interested in hearing from anyone who would like to speak. We're also determined to maintain appropriate decorum. Please be sure that your comments are respectful and constructive, are specific to the voting item for which you have signed up to speak. If a speaker strays off topic for too long, they'll be asked to conclude their remarks. We want every person who is interested in speaking to be treated with respect, to have their full time to speak. So we plan to give every speaker up to 3 minutes if possible, and that's possible. If you are still speaking at 3 minutes, you'll be asked to finish your remarks. Be brief, polite applause after a speaker is fine if you're so inclined. No shouting, please, positive or negative. While a person is at the podium, please no comments or other intentional noise such as cheering or booing from the audience during their comments. If public decorum is not maintained, we will recess the meeting until order can be restored. Per open meeting laws, board members are not allowed to respond to public comment except to clarify misinformation if necessary. So, all right.
I'll be nice.
All right. Ms. Reeder.
So this will go on green, yellow, you have 30 seconds left, and then red is your green.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm Haley Reeder. My husband and I and our 3 kids have been in Prescott a little bit over a year. Good evening, school board. Today I'm here to address you as an involved parent, former classroom teacher, and a current substitute teacher. It is my understanding that class sizes next year will increase and directly impact not only my children, but also teachers who I greatly respect and appreciate. Teachers who work hard to teach, positively influence, and care for our children each day. I spend a lot of time in my children's school and can attest that larger class sizes will negatively impact students and teachers immensely. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to spend time in the classrooms in Prescott schools, but if you have, you will observe students and teachers who are navigating a post-COVID learning environment. As a mother, I have witnessed negative impacts in my own son's lives, so I'm also speaking from direct experience. A continual concern in education is teacher retention. I first want to say thank you for making a raise happen for our teachers. They deserve it and they need it. When we speak of teacher retention, another important factor to consider is class sizes. The National Library of Medicine informs us that the strain faced by children and parents, and by extension our teachers, resulting from the pandemic can result in more challenging behaviors among children. If you were able to spend time in classrooms, you would surely notice a great increase in these issues. The ability to address these behaviors cannot be consistent nor allow teachers to be productive with increased class sizes. In addition, experts from Brookings Institute argue that smaller class sizes can have significant long-term effects on student achievement. These effects seem to be greatest when introduced in earlier grades. When the district is considering having 25 plus students in a first grade classroom and 30 plus in a fourth grade classroom, where we just learned we need to see the most growth, we should be alarmed. First grade has a huge emphasis on reading, and when considering the reading block and expecting teachers to differentiate using small groups, there is no feasible, effective way for teachers to reach each child's individual needs every day. With 25 students and 5 students in each group, you have maybe 10 minutes per group, which gives a maximum of 2 minutes per child. That is not enough time. In keeping with our district motto, let's mean what we say. Every child, every day. Give our students what they need to succeed. Manageable class sizes for teachers so our students know they matter. And the ability to be successful early on and not having to play catch up as they progress through their school years. Don't leave our schools fighting to hire last-minute teachers when the hiring pool is void of high-quality educators. I challenge each of you board members to step into a classroom with class sizes as they stand right now. And tell me that you feel comfortable giving these teachers more students and still expecting the same or better results. Give our teachers and students the best chances of success by making the right decisions at the right time, right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. All right. Moving on to item B1, consider approving an out-of-country travel request from Mr. Ernst, German and English teacher at PHS, for the Prescott AZ Sister City Foreign Exchange to Zeitz, Germany from May 30th to June 15th, 2024. All right, Adam. Bring it.
I know, here I am. Well, I get to be here again to talk about another wonderful opportunity for our students. And so this is one that's been happening for quite a while. I was here with you last year talking about the Sister City Exchange. And so it's coming up on that time of year again. And so we'd like to request a travel to our sister city, which is Zeitz, Germany. It'll be 5 students traveling. We will actually have 2 chaperones, and I want to introduce 2 people to you. So Mr. Robert Ernst in the back has actually been making this trip many times through the years. He teaches English and German for us at the high school, amongst other things that he takes care of. And this year, he's actually not traveling with. He will be the organizer. But last year, he took Mr. Predmore here, Chris Predmore, who we were talking about CTE. This is our auto instructor, Mr. Predmore, who does an amazing job as well. He traveled with Mr. Ernst last year, and he will be chaperoning along with one of our special education teachers, Miss Catherine Gates. So what questions can I answer for you guys about this one? Oh, by the way, it would be 5 of our students and 6 of Bradshaw Mountain students, and it would be a total of 3 chaperones with that group going to take part in this. And then, as usual, they would then send students to see us, just like they did this year, which was really pretty special experience for any of you who got a chance to.
Nice. All right. Questions?
I just wanted to know, what do they do while they're there? Because I noticed one student is going again.
Oh, do you have somebody going again? Mm-hmm. Oh, very cool. So they get to do all kinds of stuff, and I can go to these guys a little bit, but I would tell you that they get to experience German culture and find out what's going on there. They visit the school and give presentations about Prescott High School and what an American school is like. And they get to be, I think it's well said here, cultural ambassadors for our Prescott area. Is there anything that you guys would like to add to the things that they get to do?
Well, the only thing is all the cities in Germany are very close together, so within 45 minutes we're near Leipzig, we're near Dresden, we're near Erfurt, we're near Weimar, and so almost always there's small day trips to different places. Their families will take them to different cities around. And then they also plan lots of little activities for us. Like one of them is there's a little river that they raft down. We visit lots of museums, but the main thing is they're going to school at least 3 days, 4 days a week. And we also visit all the schools and we interview. We spend a lot of time just sharing life in America to all the students in their classes. So they all prepare PowerPoints.
Do they learn about World War II and the Holocaust?
Yes and no. There's the Buchenwald camp is near Weimar, and we've always planned to do a group trip to Buchenwald, but we haven't pulled it off yet. But it's also, there's always a few students whose families do a tour and get, there's amazing museums at that camp. So,
Nice.
And they raised all the money themselves, right?
yes,
Nice.
That's how it works. It doesn't cost us anything, and it's really one of the best deals around. Once we find out how much it actually costs the families, it's kind of, we'll have people knocking down the doors to apply, because it's really, it costs almost nothing. They're a couple $100 for 2 weeks in Germany. It's a great deal. And we've got a couple of kids that are really into history. I know you mentioned the one that went twice. He's a full history nerd, and he goes to all different museums, and it's really is kind of an amazing experience.
All right.
Other questions?
All right. All right. I'll consider a motion to approve an out-of-country travel request from Mr. Robert Ernst, German and English teacher at PHS for the Prescott AZ Sister City Foreign Exchange to Zeitz, Germany from May 30th to June 15th, 2024.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any? You good, Jay?
Aye.
All right. No opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
Next item is 9B2. Consider approving the 2024 budget package based on enrollment projections, increases, decreases, and salary increase options as outlined in the attachment fiscal year 25 proposed budget package. Mr. Moore.
I am so excited to present this, or represent it after our governing board sat down with us in groups of two. Just kind of give you a history and a timeline for the year. While our students are in school, operating in one school year, in the business office and school world, we're operating in multiple school years, multiple fiscal years, with the previous fiscal year ending in November when our AFR is done, which comes to the governing board for a vote. Right after that, we just start planning for the next fiscal year, analyzing our current enrollments. The 100th day is right at the end of January, which dictates the current fiscal year's budget, because we operate in current year funding. So over the last 2.5 months, we have been looking at our enrollment. We've been looking at and getting input from the sites, our principals, about district needs. And ultimately, our proactive budgeting says we're going to give a raise, no matter what, with keeping class sizes and programs in the district in mind. If we get one out of whack, we will lose students, we will lose teachers, and the district won't be as great as it is right now. So with that being said, the budget package is a philosophical budget. This is not the state mandated budget. You vote on that in June and July. This essentially outlines the board of where we see our increased revenue, where we see increased costs next year, and then balancing, adjusting our current programs, our current staffing to meet the raise that we're hoping to give our staff members. And in this case, it worked out to be a raise higher than I ever thought that it would be for this year. But so this now starts our next year's budget conversation. So with that being said, this budget document is a tool that we've used. And Clark, how do you want to go about going over it? Do you want to go over it?
I'll walk you through this. As you've got questions about things, we've had the opportunity to visit with you individually or in pairs about this, and you've asked some questions, but anything that you feel that you want to highlight for the public, please definitely ask questions about that. Anything that's occurred to you since we've sat down to visit, let's have those questions as well. As Brian mentioned, there's 3 columns here. The first column is our things that we don't have control over, increased costs and increased money that will come to us from the state. There is actually a little bit of that, believe it or not, even here in Arizona. The second column is things that we do have control over, so recommendations for you, and then the third column is just a summary of those. And what we want to see in that very last cell where it says net is the number 0. If we have a large positive number there, that means that we're cutting too much. We're in danger of increasing class sizes in a way that would not be positive, et cetera. If we have a negative number there, we don't have enough money to afford the priorities that we've set out in the budget. If we have a 0 there, we've balanced them just the way that we want. And you can see that's the case. The first column, our fixed expenses, are, what am I trying to say? Inflation, that's the word. Inflation went up 3.6% this last year. Our healthcare costs are going up almost exactly double that. So that will cost us an additional $271,000 for that. We don't pay anybody within our district minimum wage or close enough to minimum wage so that when the minimum wage increased substantially this last year to $14.35, that we need to make an adjustment for next year's budget based on that. However, the custodial service that we contract with does pay folks at minimum wage, several of their folks, not all. And part of our contract with them is if there is a substantial increase in Arizona's minimum wage, that we make that whole for them. And so that'll cost us $75,000. You can see the total new expenses that we don't have control over are about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Fortunately, we can fill in, we can pay for much of that from what the state will pay for us. Again, with inflation going up 3.6%, even though there's a huge hole in the state budget and they're looking to save in various places, one place they won't be able to save is an inflation adjustment for schools to the base per pupil funding that they do. That's written into law that they have to fund us at the rate of inflation or 2%, whichever is less. And inflation was 3.6%. They'll fund us at roughly half of that, 2% for this next year. So it's going to leave us in a tough situation as it did the year before and almost every year. But it will make up some. And so you can see $481,000 of new money that we're anticipating come to us based on our enrollment. That next cell you can see there is that we don't anticipate additional students. We also don't anticipate fewer students. We're making a projection based on that. The state used to fund us on what we have this year for next year, so we knew exactly what it would be. Now they ask us to make our best guess and either penalize taxpayers or penalize students if we guess wrong. Brian's really good at guessing, and we've been very close every year. We hope we're close again. Our trend over the last few years is basically flat enrollment with just very, very, very moderate growth, even though there's fewer kids in Prescott. TEI, we've talked about Teacher Experience Index. We get a little bit more money from the state for that next year. It won't go very far, but every little bit counts. And you can see the amount that we'll bring in, about $500,000 compared to the amount that will go out. Again, things that we don't have control over. There's a delta of about $150,000. That would equal enough money if we didn't make any other adjustments of any kind to offer a 0.6% raise to our staff. We're not going to offer a 0.6% raise, or at least I am not going to recommend to you that we invest in our teachers and our staff in such a paltry way. That's not enough when we're in a situation where things cost more every year. We want to attract the best people and retain the best people. We know from experience, we've had several years where the board in past years did not choose to invest with a proposed raise to all staff. And we lost staff. We lost bus drivers, we lost parapros, we lost principals, we lost teachers. That's not a situation I care to repeat going forward. So I told Brian, we need to get to at least 2.5% for a raise this year. You know, the last several years we've had enough budget funds from the state and grants and whatnot to offer 4 or 5%. I would have loved to have gotten there. We're just, as we mentioned with the state budget, not there. So I said, Brian, let's do 2.5%. He accused me of using illegal substances. But it turned out that our healthcare costs, although they went up substantially, went up a little less than we thought they were going to. So there was a little bit more flexibility than we thought. You can see that we are recommending a 3% raise. You can see the costs for that in red figures, and in parentheses, that's The total cost for all staff members, teachers, classified staff, administration, and all of our other folks as well to receive a 3% raise and fold that into the budget going forward will be about $673,000. So we don't have quite enough money to do that. Again, there's some left over from the state, 150. If we want to get 672, we need to make some adjustments with our ongoing commitments in our budget. In addition to that, as you know, we've had this ESSER grant. We've been paying for several things from that. We very thoughtfully and intentionally did not put a lot of things, did not pay for a lot of things, I should say, from the ESSER grant that we thought we were going to need past the 3-year time period that ESSER grants were available. They were to meet short-term acute needs based on the impacts of COVID. And so we obviously paid for safety equipment, et cetera. As far as people, we paid for things that helped on a short-term basis to do interventions with kids, fill in gaps that way, mental health professionals, et cetera. And all of those things have been tremendously helpful, but we're in the same position as every other district. We can't continue those without folding them into the budget, and we're not going to fold most of them into the budget. There are a few recommendations that we do have for actually increasing our budget. That's that next cell in the middle of the column. There's a couple of salary schedules that we, as I asked Mr. Binder, hey, take a look at our regional competitors, so to speak, other districts in the area, particularly our neighboring districts. Where do we stand in terms of what we pay bus drivers, teachers, principals, et cetera? And it turns out we compare very favorably in nearly every category except for 2. So we're making a recommendation that we adjust those, and we've talked with you about those. PHS has a number of different programs. Mr. Neely's here almost every month talking to us about different opportunities for kids. 2 of the opportunities for kids that we're most proud of and are committed to our early college program that Ava's a part of right now, that kids get to go to Yavapai College every day and in many cases come out of that program with an associate's degree or at least many credits toward graduating from college eventually. And another program we're super proud of is our CTE program, which we highlighted a little bit tonight. We are making some adjustments to the budget in terms of how those are funded, and the net increase to the budget will be about $37,000. We're going to be able to take more from our CTE grant, pay for things that had been in the budget, and the early college program, which we had heretofore not budgeted for. We're going to need to budget for that going forward, and the net is a negative $37,000. Questions about anything so far? You gonna let me ramble?
No.
Please.
Well, you know I'm not for across-the-board raises.
Okay, we won't give you one.
We are, putting a lot more demands on our teachers.
Yes.
I mean, we have inundated them with new curriculum to learn, which in the classroom, that's a big deal.
A lot of teachers see that as a support, but you're right. We do have some new curriculum.
Right, and then with our parents speaking tonight with higher class size.
Right.
I had 35 in my 4th grade class the whole time. We loved having lower class sizes.
Right.
And we consider 25 pretty lucky to have, but we are saying that they're going to have to step up to the plate for that. And I love, love, love the early college and CTE program. A lot of our kids aren't college bound and they want a skill, a trade. So, and our classified staff work really, really hard. So I'm just not for an across-the-board raise for everyone. Our administration, you're going to have to explain to me again. I know you explained it in that meeting that Cara and I were in about restructuring the DAT.
Yes.
The DAP. I'd like you to go over that.
Sure, sure.
But that's what I'm asking for, maybe a 1 or 2% on administrative pay and give that buffer to them because a 3% raise for someone making $120,000 is $3,600 for that year. I don't know why the counselors got 301 money, but apparently they did in our budget. You told me everybody got $3,000.
No.
December?
Only staff that are 301, the lower 40 classroom site fund eligible. That money is put aside specifically for the staff that are eligible, and the district about 3 years ago decided that 100% of that money would go to those staff members. They include teachers and teachers on assignment.
But what is 301 money for? Isn't that for classroom resources?
It has a menu of items that it can pay for, and the district, with the guidance of the governing board, decided that the best use of that money is to pay staff that are eligible for that money. We could hire more staff with it. We could send staff to professional development. There are a menu, about 7 items. Staff pay is one of them, and we put 100% to eligible staff, teachers and teachers on assignment, get all that money. $3,000 comes in December, the rest comes in June. We could spread it out in every paycheck. We could do it quarterly as a district with guidance from the teachers. They voted on this, decided to get get some in December, and then in June, the rest of it to fund their summer spending.
So for people who don't know what 301 money is, we get that money every year. It's part of the sales tax.
A 1% sales tax increase back in 2001. So every year, the Joint Legislative Budget Committee puts out how much a student is worth, and districts then, based on previous year's population, are distributed that money, and then the district can spend it in any legal area, and PUSD gives it to the staff members that are eligible for it.
Is it all just sales tax?
Yes. It's a 1% of our sales tax goes to 301 and is distributed. This year was $553 per ADM. And so that's about $3 million. It goes 100% to staff that are eligible. That's teachers and teachers on assignment.
Brian, let me ask you a question, and maybe you can help address one of other concerns. Would you get your calculator out really quick, and while we're talking about the rest of this, see if you can figure out for us, if we did a 2% raise for administration, you see the total figure there for 3%, how much money would be available for teachers in addition to that? So if we went from, if we only did 2/3 of that amount, there was an extra, you see what I'm saying? You can get there. We're looking at,
negligible amount.
it is, but I'd love for you to tell us what we're looking at, how much teachers would make extra per year if we went with a 2% administrative raise instead of 3%. My guess is it's something less than $100 over the course of the year, but if you could figure it out for us and give us that figure here in a minute, that would be great.
Just to also piggyback, nothing in the budget package is cutting staff to the extent that it's going to raise class sizes. We have
actually, I was going to ask that.
capacities in every grade level.
That's our very next table that we're going to get to your question and the
Yep.
class size piece.
And there isn't anything that will directly impact student class size except for increased enrollment. We're not decreasing our population besides a few areas that Mr. Tunney will talk about, and they were 100% enrollment related.
So if I understand correctly, we're keeping our class sizes the way they are.
We are, yeah.
And
Again,
I
I'm gonna
know,
go over
Haley,
that
I
detail in a minute.
appreciate every single word that came out of your mouth.
Absolutely.
And I believe every single sentence that you
Absolutely.
said. I was in the trenches K through 2 for 30 years, so I know what you're talking about. I understand completely, and it was my understanding our class sizes will stay the way they are now. Does that mean they're the best? No. They're-
I hope
yeah.
they believe that they are, but
But,
that's not.
oh, okay.
That's true.
Sorry, I thought we could discuss it later. Okay.
We can talk about voting items for sure. Yeah, addressing the members of the audience directly is probably outside the parameters of what's allowed, but yeah. So, great points, good questions as well. Let me proceed and we'll get into the details of both of those things you just brought up because they're very important parts of this. I appreciate it. There are a couple of other pieces that were covered by Esther that we want to fold into the budget. One is internal teacher coverage. Our subpool is more shallow all the time. We have some great folks, but we don't have enough great folks. And so occasionally we ask teachers to cover for each other. We want to pay the teachers at essentially their hourly rate to do that. If we're saying, hey, Mr. G, don't teach English third period. Instead, go across the hall, teach Mrs. Robertson's class. And tonight, I'd like you to do your preparation for classes instead. He deserves to be compensated for that. That's something we've been paying out of ESSER. ESSER will disappear, but we want to do that going forward. So $48,000 for that. And then the last piece is we've had an increase in our number of ELL students over the last couple of years. That's cyclical. It goes up and down all the time. It's gone up. We were hoping it would go down by the time ESSER disappeared, but it hasn't. It's remained relatively stable, very, very small. Again, there are people who are under the impression there's some flood of immigrants coming to Prescott across the border. 1,450 kids at the high school. You said how many are ELL students? About 12, and not all of them are from Mexico. We've got some from Vietnam and from Croatia and places like that. So there is no flood, but there is a need to address those students' language learning needs. And we've been paying for some of that out of ESSER. We need to pay for part of one teacher's salary going forward out of M&O instead of ESSER to keep teaching those kids. So Linda, to your question about a DAT restructure, that we're all of those things are important, but they're moving the needle kind of the wrong way, away from raises, so to speak, right? All that red there. So we need some black to move toward raises that we're proposing that we offer to you. DAT restructure is part of that. We're looking at class sizes at each of the schools. Again, what's been said is absolutely accurate. We are in no case proposing that we boost class sizes well above the same targets that we've had for years that have helped us to attract teachers, retain teachers, and be successful enough to get an A grade. Would we love to have class sizes even smaller? Absolutely. We're going to need some more money from the legislature to do that. But we are going to keep class sizes, maintain them just about where they're at in virtually every case. And in no case are we looking at going well above what we've been targeting for years. In some cases, we've got some classes that have just been too small. Financially, that's unsustainable, and we're looking to move back up. So that class size is increasing, but not above what we've done successfully for many years. I want to be clear about that. But before I ask principals to do any of that hard work, we want to do some hard work on the district level. We're restructuring our district admin team. Mrs. Reed is going to be retiring at the end of the year, despite my best efforts to convince her otherwise. She just smiles at me like that every time. And so we're not going to be replacing her position next year. Instead, I'm going to ask Mrs. Secor to take on a substantial number of Mrs. Reed's former duties, but not all. I'll take on some of Mrs. Reed's former duties, and Mr. Binder will take on some of Mrs. Reed's former duties. We're all just going to work a little bit harder, hopefully maybe a little bit smarter than we have. I don't see anybody working smarter than Marty has been.
Brian, I got some things for you too.
Oh, nice. But Brian's already overwhelmed. When I walk into his office and he's in the fetal position under his desk, sobbing softly to himself, I know that guy is maxed out.
I'm just walking around looking for stuff to do.
Oh, there you go. All right. So at any rate, we'll be doing that. Kelsey is our director of instructional support right now. We certainly want to keep a main focus on that, a serious focus on that. So she'll be doing just that. She also, as part of her role, is the leader of our instructional coaches. Totally makes a lot of sense. But there are districts that have a model where they have a lead instructional coach who leads that effort within the district, and that's what we're doing going forward, is recommending to you that we have a lead instructional coach. We'll take some of Kelsey's former duties, and instead she'll take on some of Marty's former duties, and we'll parse things out that way. And the total amount of savings there, plus a restructure that's similar, in many ways parallel, in many ways in our business office, a retiring person, giving that person's duties to other remaining people. The total amount of savings there is almost exactly $150,000 toward this raise that we're doing for everybody. Once we did that hard work on the district level, then we started to look at other places. Within our behavior support, we've talked to you. The amount of investment that we've done, that we've put into behavior support and student wellness over the last few years has grown substantially, particularly after COVID. We had ESSER grant funds for part of that funding that's going away. We've had some folks tell us that they're resigning or retiring, so we're looking at a restructure anyway. We did some very hard work with our principals, and we're able to come up with what we feel is a very solid proposal for actually increasing some support for that at the elementary school level, restructuring that at other levels, and saving ourselves $83,000 in M&O in the process. And then the last piece is enrollment-related staff adjustments. We talked about this before. For years, we looked on a yearly basis at our staffing allocation. We have a staffing allocation model We like to be right around 24 in kindergarten. If we go much higher, learning suffers. We had a speaker speak to that earlier. She's exactly right. If we go much lower, our financial picture suffers. We're not New York. We're not New Jersey. We don't get funded that way. We're Arizona, so we've got to be very careful about that balance. And we're always balancing class sizes with staff remuneration, with programs, those three things, academic programs and how we focus on, math, things like that. Those three things are a careful balance every year. If one of them gets badly out of balance, we lose people, our learning suffers, et cetera. So we're very thoughtful about this, but we looked and we said, okay, what are we looking at? The high school is just about right. We only asked for a very small amount of cuts there. And Mr. Neely came up with something brilliant that he feels is going to work out really, really well in terms of adjusting the way that they do their open labs. At the middle school level, we found that the number of kids that have been moving on from Granite to Mile High over the last couple of years has gone down a bit. Again, we've not lost overall enrollment in the district, but there's some softness in our enrollment, and we actually have class sizes in some cases that are substantially smaller than our target of around 32 for middle school. And so there was room for some adjustments there. We'll be adjusting PE classes. We've got 2 PE teachers with some classes as small as 15 or 16 kids. That's not sustainable for our core class, let alone PE. So we're adjusting there. We'll only have 1 PE teacher go with us at Mile High next year, and then some adjustments in science as well at Mile High. And we feel that class sizes of 23, 24, again, is not sustainable. So we'll be moving back toward that target of about 32 and not going over that in any case. So that's at Mile High. We've talked to you as well at Discovery Gardens. They've got relatively small class sizes. They'll be making some adjustments there. And then the final significant adjustments within this last line in that middle column are at Abayajed Elementary School, where we've got kindergarten classes of 18 or 19. That's fantastic if you're a private school on the coast of South Carolina. But it doesn't work in Arizona financially. It's terrific to have that few kids, and 24 it's hard. There's no question. I was in the classroom for 22 years. I get it. I get it probably more than most superintendents, but it's been something that's been workable. It's helped us attract good people and retain good people. It's helped us provide excellent instruction in the classroom over the years, targeting at 24, so we're moving back toward that target. We won't be going over that in any case. If we get to 25, we may squeeze a little bit. If we get 27 kids in the class, we're going to hire somebody new. We'll absolutely do it. We've done it year after year in the past, and we've always found good people. Our speaker spoke earlier to the fact that it's harder to find good people as we move forward in the hiring cycle. That's true, but we've been very fortunate to do that in the past. And if we need to do it going forward, we'll come to the board and say, hey, we got more kindergarten kids than we thought. Fantastic. We'll all applaud, and then we'll hire a teacher to make sure our class sizes are not out of whack with what they've always successfully been in the past. Oh, Brian, if we did an administrative raise of only 2%,
All right.
how much would that make available? You got that for us?
So the administration on there specifically represents principals, assistant principals, and the higher level of the district admin team. If we only did a 2% raise, so basically cutting by a third, that would give enough for a 3.08% raise to all the rest of the staff members. So teachers making $45,000, which is our average teacher contract, would make an additional $36 a year, or $1.50 a paycheck, or $1.20 after their taxes. So if the governing board feels that administration should receive a lesser raise with those figures on how that money can be distributed, that's the impact. So $1.20 a paycheck for every teacher.
I appreciate that. So it's a nominal amount is what we're talking about. We felt that it's more important.
Are we talking 3% on 40,000? Is that what we're talking?
If we took the administrative raise, which is 3% on here, do you see that, Linda? The administration, all right, administration up there is 3%, just like every other staff member. That 3% for the principals, assistant principals, and the upper district admin level would cost the district $55,000 out of the $672,000. If we cut that raise for those administrators down to 2% and distributed the savings by the administrators not getting as high of a raise, a teacher making $45,000 would get $1.50 more a paycheck by lowering the administrators down to 2%.
So in practical terms, very low
$36
difference.
a year.
Philosophically, I feel like we need to invest in all of our folks. Just in our neighboring districts, which are also in a really nice part of Arizona, they have a hard time finding and retaining good administrative staff. I don't want to find us in that same spot. We've got terrific principals, and I want to keep them. So I will always come to you. In the future, there's a possibility if we get additional funding from the state, I'll put more of that toward teachers, very possibly. In this situation where we're looking at such a small raise, I'm recommending it be investing in all of our staff, our bus drivers, our teachers, our nurses, and our principals.
Okay, well, I have to bring this up at this time because I was going through the budget and I came across those teacher contracts and they're already signed by Stan and post dated for tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I checked with a colleague of mine from Scottsdale, and us meeting two at a time in private meetings is an open meeting law violation.
I think you'll find that you're incorrect about that. We've consulted with our attorney multiple times about that.
Okay, well, I reported to the Attorney General because
Okay.
they have, according to Arizona law, been charged in Scottsdale for doing that. And so unfortunately, we might all want to self-report that it's called 2x2x1 meetings. And as of February 2nd, 2021, we didn't announce that meeting and it is a violation.
That's
So-
different than legal advice we've received multiple times in the past.
I'm sorry?
It's different than legal advice that we have received multiple times in the past. I'm sure there'll be a resolution from our district's attorney who does this for a living, education law.
Given it was a
They'll
budget,
Chalk it up for me.
yes, given it was a budget meeting and I feel like it was my meeting. Did you know this information before we had the meeting?
No,
Okay.
I was going through the board packet because we didn't get the board packet till Friday. We met, I met on, Cara and I were there on the 28th.
Wednesday?
But I don't know when you
It was
guys,
Wednesday. You were there on a Wednesday and.
Speaking of potential open meeting law violations, this discussion is not agendized, and so we're not going to be able to continue with it. But we
Okay,
can talk
just letting
afterwards,
you know.
absolutely.
letting you know.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I appreciate that. So last column, we've already gone over all these pieces. That's just a summary of what we've talked about. Are there questions about the budget specifically that I can answer for you before you have an opportunity to vote on it?
Nope.
My concern is just that the behavior support restructure that we're looking at. And I know we're providing more help for students in the schools in general.
Right.
I just want to be sure that our staff are not going to feel that they have to push off one of those crisis situations or a student. My concern is with parents and families in the district that need to find a provider in the community.
Sure.
Because we can't provide the highest level of care for them. And if they don't have the funds, the resources, they might not have insurance, whatever their
Sure,
situation
sure.
may be. And if they've relied on that support over the years, I just want to be sure our staff is aware that we still have a duty to provide that crisis care for them up front. That we're not just going to say, well, that's a tier 3 issue. We're going to refer you out, and then they have to wait 3 months
Sure.
to make an appointment with a mental health provider in the community, because that can be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a super important concern. It is something that we talked about. That portion of these discussions, principals fully led, talks about, is there any savings we can realize within our student behavior and well-being supports? And we're reasonably confident we'll be able to provide the same levels of support we have for students in the past while restructuring this way. It's a really important thing you say. At the same time, philosophically, it's important to note that if somebody has a health issue of any kind, we are not equipped to, nor should we be expected to, provide ongoing physical health care for a student in school for a high level, nor mental health care. We can triage things, we can help diagnose, and we can try to put them in touch with people in the community that do that, but we don't provide surgeries or physical therapy or anything of that nature for physical health, and we certainly are not in a position to be able to do that for mental health. We hadn't been doing that really over the last couple of years. We usually triage the situation, try to provide what we can, check-ins with kids, et cetera, but really that longer-term care is something that they've always needed to find in our community. And you're right, it's hard. The good news is that we've got 3 folks who currently work for us who say they're going to be out in the community next year providing just that level of support that you're talking about. So we're hopeful that families will be able to do that. It's a super concern that you bring up, and we share it.
I hope that those networks are established and spread throughout the district so that all of our staff that are helping support behavior issues are aware of who's available, who's out there, how they get in touch, and maybe some ongoing training and connection for those people.
And there's a safety net that sometimes we don't talk about in a urgent crisis situation through the county ESA. They have counselors available. Also, what we find is our neighboring schools and districts always step up. If we have a crisis happening in a neighboring district, we always offer our counselors to come up and help. And so there is that, and our counselors are very trained in the resources available in the community. But you bring a good point, that we don't want to just, have these kids drop off and yeah.
We're just looking at it on paper,
Yeah.
so it jumps out.
Yes.
I know that's
Yeah.
probably not what's going to happen, but
It's a
Yeah.
super concern, and we totally share it. We feel like this restructure will address, every level of concern in a way that we need to do in the school system going forward. And I'll mention again, this is really important. I mentioned this in our meetings that we had with each of you, but we're going to monitor all of these things. Anything that's an adjustment, we want to monitor this. If we can get by with total less than 1 assistant superintendent, because he's got HR duties and she's got curriculum and instruction duties, great. If we can't, we'll come to you next year and say we need to make an adjustment. If we feel like, we've over-adjusted in mental health care for kids, we'll come to you next year and say, if we get more kindergarten kids than we expect, we'll come to you next week or next month or partway through next year and say we've got to make an adjustment. So, yeah, all of these things will be monitored, and we'll adjust if we need to.
It's part of the proactive budgeting is go forward with a package. If our numbers dictate that we need to make adjustments, we use what we call the one-time monies to hire, and then if it's still needed, then we'll budget it in the next year as a budget package.
I can attest to the fact that, before the ESSER funds became available, I mean, you had to be creative and you had to bring resources together. So this has been nice, but now that it's going away, I mean, you do have to revert back to times of crisis and sharing resources and shared services. And it's just the way you guys all know what to do, because you did it 3 or 4 years ago.
And I want to make clear, we're not looking at significant cuts anywhere that we're scared of. We feel like this is going to work. We've come up with something really solid. We're not Mesa Unified School District shedding people right and left and boosting up class sizes and worried will we not be able to do things. Yeah, absolutely. There's some very targeted, very strategic adjustments here that we feel is going to help us to provide just as high a level of academic and other support for students as we have in the past.
Yep. All right. So I'd like to take a motion to approve the 2024-25 budget package based on enrollment projections, increases, decreases, and salary increase options as outlined in the attachment fiscal year 25 proposed budget package. I'd like to take a motion.
I'll make that motion.
A motion, have a second? A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, why have you already signed the contracts?
I can address that really quick.
Please.
So if the board votes, we're not to our contract agenda item yet, but we will be in just a moment. If the board votes to approve the contracts, we want to be ready to hand them out first thing tomorrow morning. And so we have an electronic signature from the board president that we have on file, that we prepare those contracts in advance every single time. We actually went over this with you when we met last week, but in case you've forgotten, we have those contracts prepared to go out tomorrow morning in every single case. If the board votes no, we won't distribute a single one of those. There is no concern there.
Any further discussion?
We've done that for years.
We've done it for decades, as does
Decades.
every other district that I know of, yes.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'll abstain.
Abstain on what purpose?
Because I don't feel that we should pass that.
Okay, did you get that, Sarah?
Yes.
All right, item 9B3, consider approving the issuance of contracts and agreements to eligible Prescott Unified School District staff members for the 2024 to 2025 school year. And that is Andy.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so obviously a big part of this budget conversation revolved around people, and our principals and our all administration team really have been working hard throughout this process to look at how these changes, all the changes that were just addressed, are going to impact our current employees. And so with that, I have a list of our current certified staff that I'll pass on over, and then also the agreements for our classified staff. And so asking for the board to approve the issuance of contracts as early as tomorrow with that 3% raise. Asking to issue these now, feeling that it's really important to get these out to our staff as soon as possible, knowing that we have a lot of competition around the area, around the state. We want to make sure that we are getting contracts in our employees' hands, like I said, as soon as possible, and also finding out if we do have any additional staff leaving who haven't notified us yet, so we can post and try to find good qualified staff before the other districts snatch them up. So the list that you have in front of you is current as of about 4:30. I was making adjustments, probably had about 4 or 5 just this afternoon, and so those are based on all the work of our administrators. They are, if the board approves, it will go out tomorrow. Employees have 15 days to return them. That brings it to April 3rd, 15 work days. And so we have spring break in there, and so we want to make sure that we provide our employees adequate time to review that and get it back to us if necessary. But April 3rd would be the deadline to return those certified contracts. And then any that have not been returned, we'll be posting those and, like I said, trying to find a replacement. So any questions on the... Thank you. Yeah, so in the board packet, we do have, and Linda was just referring to those, we do have some of the examples contracts, so you can kind of see some of the wording in there. Those have been all reviewed by our district attorney as well. They're pretty standard and similar to what's been used in the past with very minimal changes.
Any questions for Andy? All right, I'll take a motion to approve the issuance of contracts and agreements with district staff for the 2024-25 school year.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Yeah.
Linda,
Do we have an opposition?
Did you oppose, Linda?
I think she said no.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you.
I'll give those to Sarah.
Who? Sarah?
Move on to item 9B4. Consider approving the PUSD salary placement schedules.
Yeah, so now moving to future hires, we want to again stay competitive and making sure that we have a salary placement scale that is comparable and budget-friendly. We review, Clark has asked me to review salaries across the state, but particularly look at areas in our region to kind of see how we compare. And as he mentioned earlier, we're pretty competitive. Really didn't see any major discrepancies. A couple areas that we adjusted, that we adjusted on the salary placement scales. And I'll just kind of reiterate for any of those who don't remember how that works. We have the placement scale is not a guaranteed increase from year to year. It's used to simply place new hires based on their education and their experience level. And so adjusting those from year to year to make sure we, again, are staying competitive is what we want to do. With the 3% raise, we decided to adjust all salary placement schedules by 1% in order to
1.5%?
Sorry, 1.5%, half of the raise. That way we're increasing them, but not to the point where any new hire would come in and be earning more than an existing employee. So, so with that, we're going to be asking for approval of the new salary schedules. They're all included in the packet, the board packet. Any questions on any of those?
I have one question.
Yeah.
So if you have a teacher who comes in with 20 years of experience, do they automatically go into that level, or do you set them at a placement level below their experience level?
Yeah, great question. So they do. We offer, and on the placement schedule, one of them is specifically for teachers, and it does break it down by education experience level, and it does go up to 20 years.
So if they are, say they have 21 years of experience and they want to come here to teach with PUSD, would they get that, would they start at that 20 plus years?
Yes, they would.
Okay.
Yes.
They get that many points toward a step.
Okay.
Yeah,
And then they get points for their education as well toward a step. Yeah, good
Yeah.
question.
Each one equates to points that then we then add together.
If some districts move them to a lower spot,
There are some districts that do only give,
10 of those years.
correct.
We used to only give up to 3 years maximum when we had a stepped scale. So,
There's a big history behind this. When we moved from those columns and rows kind of schedule that was the tradition in education to a stepless with a placement schedule, we had to adjust for leapfrogging, and we had teachers coming in that were leapfrogging our current teachers that we had even more experience. We finally got to a place where we fixed all that, and then the committee that did all that work recommended each year we try to place half of the raise into the salary placement schedule, because it does two things. It keeps those placement schedules competitive and moving with the inflation, but it prevents leapfrogging, because if you gave exactly that 3% or even more, now you're placing teachers potentially higher than current employees. So this was a philosophy that our board adopted, gosh, I don't know.
About 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago. It was a lot of work, but it's been, and honestly, most districts now have gone to the very same thing.
And it's
But
work.
I'm sorry.
Please, no, go ahead.
It encompasses everybody, right?
Yeah, all of our placement schedules.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have a copy of each.
Yeah,
do,
because
yes.
just, when you want to keep those schedules competitive, especially with our neighboring districts. You don't want them to get too stagnant, then you were placing teachers too low. So you always want to kind of move it up a little, but not too high, because then you're leapfrogging. It's a delicate balance that took a lot of work.
So what you approved a few minutes ago was designed to retain quality staff. This is looking forward to new folks to attract quality staff. And as Andy mentioned, we're just above our neighboring districts in terms of what it's a balancing act. If we're well above the other districts, that's fantastic on the one hand, but it's financially unsustainable. We're looking at large class sizes, which we don't do. We're below the state average for that, and we want to stay there. It's been successful for us. So, yeah, like Andy said, we've added What we had this year, basically across the board, just added 1.5% with the exception of the two scales that I mentioned to you earlier that we found were well below our competitors. But other than those, we're looking at a 1.5% recommended increase to all salary scales for new staff going forward.
It isn't Prescott Valley now, Humboldt, twice our size?
No.
They have how many schools?
So
I know Chino Valley has, what, 5?
Humboldt
six.
total has, I think, what is it, 11, something like that? Nine. There you go. Oh, there's the authority right there. Yeah. We've got 6 in a preschool, so they're not double our size, and that wouldn't have anything to do with what we pay teachers necessarily either.
Not being competitive with our...
Right. So whether we're Mesa, that's many, many times our size, or Kirkland, that's a fraction of our size, we want it, all of those districts want to pay teachers competitively and relatively close to the same amount as each other if they can, if they have budget funds to do so.
I'll take a motion to approve the PUSD salary placement schedules.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 9B5, consider accepting PUSD fiscal year 2023 single audit reporting package, annual comprehensive financial report, and uniform system of financial records compliance questionnaire. Mr. Moore.
That sounds
I'm
entertaining.
sorry, I didn't hear that.
I can
you
use
please repeat it?
Repeat that.
I forgot this was on the agenda. As of last year, this is a requirement that governing boards need to, via roll call, accept the previous year's auditing final products. So in front of you, you have 3 products that we hire, our auditing firm. That auditing firm is Heinfield & Meach, which, once again, independent. It is a requirement of all school districts to hire an independent firm to audit us. We'll kind of go through from, let's go biggest to smallest. The biggest document you have there is called the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. It's the one that Cara decided to tackle last year and read from front to cover. Did you get through that in 365 days?
I didn't check.
No, okay. Essentially, that is this every nook and cranny of our district. It's a very complex document that gets all the way down to depreciation level, depreciation of our assets, to even just what is our district worth as a whole, given all of our land, buildings, and any of our capital assets. It's there for you to read. It's there for you to ask questions. I will be honest, it is a level that is deeper. You really need to be a CPA in order to understand it and actually prepare it. It's the reason why most districts do hire their auditing firm to do this report. So with that being said, are there any questions on the 178-page annual comprehensive financial report? Really, the beginning of it just gives a big picture of our district, and then you just get into the numbers.
Any questions for Brian?
That report is put out by you, correct? By the business office.
That report, it's mandated that every district has it, but I don't know of a district that actually prepares that. It is prepared by our auditing firm.
Okay.
Yes.
The annual comprehensive.
Yes.
Okay.
There is an option for districts to do it themselves, and I do not know of a single district that does it.
How much does the legislature give us to be able to hire that auditing firm to do that?
That would be, how much do they? They actually pay for it all.
Do they really?
Yes, we get reimbursed for our audit.
That is
It's the
terrific.
only thing that I know of that's a mandate, that whatever you spend, you get it back.
There's a funded mandate.
I know.
Please note the date and time. This is terrific.
Literally. Now, let me change that. It's funded 2 years in reverse. Like this upcoming July, when I do the budget, I will put down 2 years ago's auditing costs to get that in our budgets for next year. So we get the money back.
Great.
So that's the big document. The second largest document there, I believe, is the compliance questionnaire. It's actually the most exciting document when it comes down to it, because it tests everything we do, literally everything. There is not a stone that's unturned. I think there's 204 different areas that they pull, as many as 50 records in that area for. A good end result compliance questionnaire is in the teens when it comes to findings. And those are in the teens for each individual area. So if they pulled 50 records in an area and 1 out of 50 was not in compliance, that's a finding. If 5 out of 50 were not in compliance, that's a finding. So one area, if you even have one record, not every I dotted, T crossed, it's a finding. For the last 3 years, I don't know how it's happened, but we've had single-digit audit findings. 3 years ago, it was 8. Last year was 4, and I'm really sorry to say this year was 5. It's just unheard of. It shows the dedication to everybody who does anything in the district, from the teachers that collect field trip money all the way to attendance clerks, to the business office, to HR. So that's a compliance questionnaire. If you see a no, it means that they found something that was not in line with what it was, and then you'll see the sample size and what the area that they found. So there's only 5 no's in that whole compliance questionnaire. Any questions on that? It's a total celebration.
Brian's right about that, but Brian's also very modest. I get the opportunity to meet with those accountants after they do our audit, and they are honestly, accountants don't get blown away by things. These folks are blown away that we have so many things right. There's tens of thousands of areas where it could be a little wrong. We rely on legal advice and experts to do things right in PUSD, and we do them right over and over. You're not going to find another district in the state that can claim what Brian just talked about. Single-digit auto findings 3 years in a row. And it's true. It's a group effort, no question about that, but the main reason for that is sitting right there in that chair.
No. Well,
All right. I'll take a motion to accept PUSD.
one more. There is one more.
The USFR and the ACE?
No, there is this SARP, the Single Audit Reporting
SARP.
Package.
Oh, that's
It's the smallest one.
Silly.
I can understand why you overlooked it. It's only 3 pages. This one is simply, every year we do get audited, not only on our operations, but actually we get really closely looked at our federal grants. And so every year they look at federal grants, and you do not want anything on your SARP as a finding. You have to do a corrective action plan. It goes to the Auditor General. The next year they ask for proof that you achieved that corrective action plan, and I'm happy to report we don't have any findings on our SARP.
Great.
And now, without any questions.
Yeah, I'll take a motion and ask for discussions later. All right.
But it is a roll call instead of a vote.
This is a roll call one?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll take a motion to accept PUSD's fiscal year 2023 single audit reporting package, annual comprehensive financial report, and uniform system of financial records compliance questionnaire. Can I have a motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to second. Sarah, would you take roll call?
Stan?
Aye.
Jane?
Aye.
Cara?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Thank you.
It passes 5-0.
Thank you.
All right, item 9B, consider approving the school facilities oversight board's terms and conditions for accepting of monies from the building renewal grant fund for PUSD school sites as presented.
I'm very sorry that I disappoint you, and I'm not bringing you any HVACs this time. But these are the bleachers at Mile High. They have an upper. I apologize, on the actual attachment in the SFB, I put boys and girls gym. It's the way it used to be, but it's really the main and what is it? An upper gym. So anyway, they're getting replaced because we think they're original to the building and they're a safety hazard, and so if you approve this, we'll start the project to get them replaced from not our funds, the SFB funds.
Great. All right. Any questions for Brian? All right, I'll take a motion to consider approving the school facility oversight board's terms and conditions for acceptance of monies from the building renewal grant fund for PUSD school sites. Have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 9C, information discussion items. Mr. Moore.
Yeah, totally as presented.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Brian? All right. Item 9C2, review proposed changes to the ASBA policy advisory, excuse me, 763-789 as presented. Mr. Binder?
Yeah, so for this first read, there's actually 24 policy revisions that we got from ASBA. I certainly encourage you to look through them all, but they do, the packet that's provided does provide a summary of each one. Looking over them, I can just kind of let you know, majority kind of fall into a couple different categories. They were either just providing some clarification, were really no change in the content of the policy, just providing a little clarification. Some were just kind of using different terminology based on new statutes. For example, one was using the word or replacing the word child protective services with child safety services. So just really minor changes like that. Some the other categories, they were sometimes just updating outdated phrases or practices. For example, one took out the word or the examples given about film strips and transparencies. Another one was replacing contacting people by telephone, instead replacing it with email. So some of those were just replacing outdated practices. A few addressed actual changes in policy, the actual content changed, but for the most part, they were either pretty insignificant or, well, I should say in all of them, we are already following the new policy. One of them relating to curriculum was basically changing it to match the standards, and we're already following the standards, so again, no change there. One, again, pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things, related to what information we post relating to pesticide application around our campuses. So it matters to our facilities, but not necessarily beyond that. So those are really the kind of the policies in summary, but certainly look through them and let me know if you have additional questions about any of them.
And to clarify, this is just a first reading, so they're being presented to the public and the board for the first time, and we've got over a month before we come back to vote on these. So in the meantime, please do reach out, and Andy's has just taken the reins on this and is doing great, and can clarify anything you've got questions about.
I had one question, and I read these very rapidly. It seemed like there was one portion or one, whatever the policy that was kind of distinguishing the ownership of the policies.
Do you remember the ownership of the policies?
Was it the one that replaced governing board for the word superintendent? Is that what you're talking about?
I will look it up and I will get back to you.
Okay.
And the other thing is that in our policy, it states for the agenda that we have a community comment section between presentations and information-only items. And I was just wondering if we were going to acknowledge that, or if we would like to amend it to only have it sometimes, or we haven't had one.
I don't think that's what's written into our policy. We can clarify that for you later, but our board has always chosen to have community, public input on voting items, but not in other parts of the agenda. It's done in different ways in different boards, but
Okay.
You think it's
point
in
out to us.
our current policy or in these changes?
The one that was sent out, it didn't have no strike-throughs or anything on it?
Okay.
All right.
Oh.
So let's look at that. That's a good heads
So
up.
not necessarily a change, but in our
That's a good
Yeah, it
existing,
just
yeah.
says that.
Okay,
The order of the meeting is different from what we should typically follow as well.
gotcha.
Yeah, I just
BEDB
said that it was a
agenda.
place where the public could speak.
Sure.
That's what it looked like
Yeah,
to me.
and
And
very-
we have not done that.
Gotcha. You're totally right. Various boards have chosen to do various things. If there's a new copyrighted policy that's intended to be considered by boards across the state, and that's included there, the board would need to determine if we're going to change our long-term practice and policy to include this. So thank you for pointing that. I thought you were talking about our current policy. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's not closely, but if it's in this new one, we need to look at that carefully. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other questions, comments? All right, moving on to 9C3, UVC lighting for HVAC systems. Ms. Khan?
Okay, so how do we do this?
So you can tell me next and I'll advance the slide.
Okay. I am no expert on this, and I'm not an HVAC guy. So the research I've done is interesting that I had to ask my niece, who's a dual doctorate in radiation oncology, because my concern is, do our kids need to wear sunscreen now in the classroom if we go to this? Next. So she described to me what the 3 kinds of bands of UV light are, and they're right there at the bottom. UVA and B are like sunlight that we do have to protect ourselves from, and crime labs use it for detecting fluids, but it's mostly, it will penetrate your skin. What I'm talking about are UVC units, and it's the shortest ray. It doesn't even enter our atmosphere. It's mostly destroyed in the ozone. Okay, next. So this will be, I don't know, Sarah, will you be putting this into the next, this whole, I didn't even think I would be putting up a presentation, but I threw it together. So if you want any of this information, UVC is used right now in hospitals, laboratories, operating rooms to sanitize. And they're finding, and water treatment, that's something that's coming up with us. They'll be injecting effluent into our groundwater around here, so it would be used in the water treatment programs. Next. Okay. This is what I thought was really, really interesting, that they have been doing a lot of research since COVID-19 in air purification. And so that's what I tried to find as much as I could with it. The UVC lamps used to disinfect air circulate through. They're installed right in the HVAC units. Since we're getting all new HVAC units, they won't have to be cleaned or anything. I guess you have to clean them and maintain them, putting in filters, those kind of things. But this HVAC system can be directly installed into the air conditioning system, and the blower, the fan, will circulate that room either through central air, or you can have individual classrooms that you can even find a tower. They offer a tower that the custodian would roll from room to room. As he finishes one room, he rolls that in, plugs it in into an empty room, and it sanitizes that room. He still has to clean the surfaces, but they are finding that it is making, I'm thinking they're finding that it could make even seasonal allergies and problems that we have with asthma. And the kids just, those are the problems with most of our kids, and if that helps them, they're much better learners if they're not, their nose is not all stuffy. So next. Okay, so we could even use it in our cafeterias to to disinfect food surfaces or extend the shelf life in our cafeterias. I was fascinated with that. Or use it in our buses and high traffic areas. So it's becoming a little more used in classrooms, libraries, and common areas, mostly in universities. So it is contributing to a healthier learning environment. So I'm enthused about that. Thanks, Sarah.
Sorry.
So there are the kinds of bugs that get killed by being exposed. They put a purple light on it, just so you know. It's an invisible light, a ray. So they put purple light with it so that you know that has a UV light bulb. It kills Staphylococcus, E. coli, Salmonella. For viruses, they're saying the flu virus right now, norovirus is hitting everyone. They're getting that stomach flu and gastro problems, herpes, cold sores, molds. It'll kill molds, which is so cool because if we have leaky classrooms and they have molds, the black mold that gets in the walls or anything, this would take care of that. Superbugs, that's where MRSA comes in and COVID-19 comes in with those superbugs that are resistant to antibiotics. So I was enthused by that. My niece, not so much. She said it has to be exposed for a long time. What they're advertising is that it can sanitize a room, a classroom size, in approximately 9 minutes. You can't be in there at the time it does that. But if they have them installed in the air conditioning units, the circulator fan is running that through all the time. So I'm just encouraged by it. Is there anything more on there? Yes. Okay, so there's more. So they've been using UV light, that's third bullet point down there, since the 30s in laboratories and things. So I'm happy about that, and CDC recommends it. This slide is mostly about COVID and SARS. So it does something with the virus's nuclei, and it keeps them from being able to replicate. Next. Far UVC light is where they mount it above 7 to 8 feet, where it's up off the ceiling. So it's a continuous thing. During the daytime when our lights are on, those UV lights would be working up there, and it would not be, those rays could not come down to where the human level is. Okay, next. So the efficacy there, upper air UVC is like when you have the vents that come out of the UVC, I believe, but I'm not sure about that. And they can put the coils in to eradicate. That's where it is that they do it. It has to be installed by someone that knows how to do that. And there's HVAC guys that know how to do that. I don't know here, but they do it for hospitals. Our hospital does not use it, so I couldn't get any first-hand knowledge on it. Next. Okay. So the Board of Education, the U.S. Board of Education, might pay for this through the American Rescue Plan. Brian, do you know about that plan that maybe we could look into?
I know that there are 4 different ARP funds that we do get, but 2 are for special ed, 2 are for homeless. I-
And since our special ed kids are pretty much included into the regular classroom, maybe that is something, I don't know.
I don't know.
Do we know any districts that are actually using it that you
No,
could
not
point
here.
us to?
They're mostly universities. I think Columbia actually did a study. Oh, that reminds me, I have a handout, so.
So we don't know of any actual school districts that are doing
I could not
it?
find them, no. Now, I'm not, I did not have a lot of time to do it, but if you'll take one and pass it around, that's about COVID. I think I have. Would you? Yeah. Or, I think it's 8, yeah.
Let's see, there's on the first.
Your slides are.
Is there any more? I think that's
that's
the
it.
last one. Yeah, I wanted to get that funding in there if I could, so.
I do believe that the VA hospital has some of these, but I'll have to ask. And if they like them or,
I didn't even think about asking them, so.
It would be nice to have our staff check into it and see what they come up with.
I think so.
I'd like to find a school district that's doing it.
We could be trailblazers anyway.
You know the cost of this at all?
No, I don't. You can get it for your home, and they put it right in, and I think they're pretty nominal, below $500 for your central air in your home.
Do you happen to know the expectancy of the unit, like the life expectancy of it either? Did they say?
I didn't find it.
Sure. Okay.
Just, just to make it, it's something you mentioned before, Linda, just to know, our normal allocated ESSER funds are gone as of this June. So,
And we still have it until June that we can use some of that money?
no, it's all been allocated to staffing
Oh,
this year, so summer school is the last of the spending for that.
Any other questions?
It's certainly intriguing. We could do a couple of things. You both mentioned, I think it's maybe not a bad idea to ask Chris Moody, who's our Director of Facilities, and I would have oversight over our heating, ventilation, air conditioning units, to look into it, see if he can find examples of other places with new technology related to health. It would seem to make sense on some levels that we might rely on, if the hospital does this and does it successfully, that we might look at that next rather than say, get ahead of the hospital on the health preservation front. But we can certainly look into it and see if there's other similar organizations with similar facilities who are doing it successfully. And if so, we could look into that for sure and see, first of all, costs, secondly, safety pieces. Some of the information you sent me, I looked through it pretty thoroughly. In general, the folks who were commenting on it thought it was likely to be safe for students. Likely to be safe for students is a standard lower than we usually have when we implement something new, but likely to be safe for students. One of the concerns they did have was maintenance people who are installing them and doing maintenance on them around the coils and whatnot, because there can be significant eye damage to anybody who doesn't have the proper eye protection, et cetera. So pros and cons in terms of health and safety benefits, we would want to look into that, but maybe we can ask Chris to do a little bit of digging around and see if he finds anything. Again, I would be reluctant to recommend to the board that we be cutting edge of anything health related that's not proven in several other areas, but if we can find several places that are doing this successfully and the cost is something that's affordable within our facilities budget, it's a really intriguing thought. And I love the idea of anything that we can do for a nominal cost that improves staff and student safety. So I love that we're looking into this. I appreciate you bringing it up.
All right. Move on to 9C4, community comments. Do you have anything to share? All right, I'll move on to 9C5. Regular meeting dates, regular study and voting session is Tuesday, April 9th, 2024, right here at 5 p.m. Other dates to highlight: spring break, March 11th through the 15th, and the spring holiday is Monday, April 1st. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor?